Always thrilled to be back at Sactown Sports 1140. And it's always a privilege to be with our guest today, longtime former Kings coach, former Kings GM, former Kings announcer, former Kings director of player personnel, all-time Kings icon, the great Jerry Reynolds. Did I miss anything, Jerry, when I ran down your Kings resume there?
Well, there's a couple things, but yeah.
We got 4 hours, so we got time. We'll get to those too.
Basically an old fan now.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Yeah. But you must be an excited fan. And here we are. I know the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl, your Chiefs, and the Kings are one of, if not the surprise team in the NBA. So you must be having a good time.
Yeah, no, it's great. You know, obviously I've been a long time Chiefs fan, and my son Jay is just an avid Chiefs fan. So it was great to see them win. I've become a little more of a Niners fan, really. So it's really difficult for me to make if Niners had got there, it would have been tough for me. But
really?
They didn't. Oh yeah, I thought Purdy, just finishing like he did, sadly got hurt. But I mean, he had a terrific year. The Niners looked like they could have won it all, and they could have.
Yeah.
They were capable. So, but that's the way it is in the championships. You got 4 or 5 teams that are good enough, and only one's going to do it.
Now, the Kansas City connection, does that go back to when the Kings were in Kansas City and you were there with them? Is that how you became a Chiefs fan?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'd gotten to know some of the Chiefs people at that time. They're long gone, of course. But I did some.
So Jan Stenerud and them, Dawson.
Well, Len Dawson, I did some radio with Len Dawson.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He was, had a radio show kind of like this.
This one's way better though.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any doubt, I had to carry Len.
Yeah, sure.
And so, no, it was great. What a nice man. I know he passed recently, but tremendous career, a former Purdue quarterback,
okay.
A little Hoosier blood in him.
Sure.
So that helps.
Yeah. So here are the Kings, and I know a lot of Kings fans are getting a little tense. It's kind of funny. You can tell how long Kings fans have been in the area. Those who haven't been around that long necessarily are feeling like, man, this is terrific, which it is. Kings fans who've been around longer feel a little bit more that sense of, yeah, I just hope they can hang on, right? Because we've seen something like this before, and it looks like the West, everybody's loading up. So what to this point here, we'll get to the future, get to that bridge when we crossed it, and so on. But what to you is the most surprising thing about the Kings start so far, Jer?
Well, obviously being in third place, number one. I mean, there wasn't anybody in America had that. You could have made an awful lot of money in Vegas. I think Vegas had them at 32.5 wins, and they're 32 right now. So they're just winning games. But, you look at the whole thing. I mean, 2 All-Stars. Coach Brown has done a marvelous job. I think offensively, they're so much fun to watch. I mean, I'm almost becoming a kid again. I'm really always sitting in my recliner, getting nervous, ready for the game.
Bowl of popcorn.
I had to cut back.
Oh,
I miss it too.
I know how you love your popcorn.
I'm a diabetic, and so that makes it tougher. Although sometimes I cheat. Don't tell anybody. But yeah, I don't know how you watch basketball without popcorn. It's almost, anti-American. Really.
Yeah, I have become a fan of it's a mix of caramel corn and cheddar popcorn. And when I first saw the bag, I thought that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and I can't stop eating it. It's really good. But be that as it may, to me, Jared, what surprised me about the Kings, they're winning despite the poor defense. We know that Mike Brown was brought here because he's supposed to, if not fix, certainly improve the defense. And the defense is still terrible, and they're winning in spite of that. And then the other thing is how well they've played in late game situations. This team hasn't been together that long, but there have been a number of late games, tight games. They've actually played well. De'Aaron Fox has carried a rather large load in that regard. But those are two things that have surprised me about this team. The defense poor, but they've still won.
Well, yeah, the offense is so good. And I think the defense is a little better than last year, but not very much.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that has surprised me a little bit. But, it's I'm not sure, if you don't have good individual defenders, it's hard to make great strides. I mean, I'm a little surprised they haven't gotten better than they have. But, I'd be a proponent of them playing a little more zone. We've talked about that
Right.
before.
And we'll get to that
a little
too.
More, a little more. But that offense, I mean, when you've got a finisher like Fox who can go get a shot when the game's tough, it's hard to find those guys. And then a big that simply makes his teammates, everybody better, and not just with his stats, but he's probably the best screener for a big in the league. Maybe Jokic is close, but he doesn't set near as many as Domas does.
You're big on what do they call screen assists?
I am not big on screen assists, but
I couldn't remember if you were. Or
but
not.
I'll tell you, if I was, he'd be leading the charge, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
The screen assist is yours, and you gotta honor it.
Yeah, I tease Jerry a little bit. Jerry and I do a podcast, Old Fashioned 3, with Phantom, and it's one of the things that comes up sometimes is the screen assist. And I know that you're not a big believer in that, which I think Quinn Snyder used to rave about Gobert, and oh boy, he's great at the screen assist. So that's why I brought it up, and I know it kind of gets under your skin a little bit.
Well, I mean, you can find stats to, I always say, statistics are like the guy that drowned in a river but had an average depth of 12 inches, but he happened to find the deep spot.
Yeah. Are you at all surprised the way the Kings have played in end of game situations when you don't guard well, especially well, and you haven't been together long? Because that to me has been a pleasant surprise as well.
What has, and they've actually played a little better defense down in crunch time. I think you see, but then most teams do. It gets tougher to score in the last 6 minutes in the NBA. It always will, and gets a little more physical, and the refs let a few more things go. And that's where I think Fox and Domas have really been outstanding in what they do. Certainly you've got some terrific spot shooters around them, but I mean, the attention they draw certainly opens up shots not for others as well as themselves. So, this is a good team. How good, we still can't put the final stamp on it.
Yeah, but if they make the playoffs this year, to me, I think no matter how it happens from here, the Kings are in the playoffs. Boom, rubber stamp it. That's a successful season, and hopefully they win. But if that to me, that's the bottom line. If they're in the playoffs, they've had a successful season.
Oh, I agree. I mean, geez, I'm hopeful that they can certainly hold on to a top 6 spot. I think that they have a legitimate chance to do that. But if they end up 8th, I wouldn't trash them. I mean, it's been a miraculous year. Nobody, so-called experts, ESPN and wherever and all, I mean, nobody had them in the top 8.
Right.
So, so there's that, and they're young. There's better days ahead. The coach the general manager have done outstanding jobs. And so there's a lot of reason to be optimistic going forward.
How about if they're in the play-in? To me, if they're in the play-in, that's fine as long as they get out of the play-in. If you're in the play-in and you don't get out of it, so you don't make the playoffs, then nope, they didn't do it. You get in the play-in, you get out of it, and you're in the playoffs, then, as I say, boom, no matter what happens after that, successful season.
Well, playoffs, absolutely.
Yes.
But play-in doesn't mean squat if you don't get in the playoffs.
Are you a fan of the play-in? I have to admit, I hated it at first, but I kind of like it, Jerry.
Sadly, me too. I really ashamed of myself because I really just said,
it works, though.
It works, so that well, though, part of the reason is not because you got all these extra teams, but it's a one and done thing.
Exactly.
And
it matters. The games matter.
The games matter. That's why, in case Adam Silver might be listening, should be no best of 7 in the first round. That's ridiculous. You ought to go back to the old days like it was when I started, best of 3. You'll have more upsets, but that's great.
But I think they're terrified of upsets because they're terrified of LeBron or somebody. And I know LeBron, their team's not very good, but they're terrified of the teams that people want to see get knocked out early. They don't want that because then that impacts the ratings. And I know real basketball people say, no, this would be fun to see other teams in there. But the TV people know that for people that don't care about basketball, there's no chance they're going to watch if it's some team that and players they've never heard of.
Well, that's what they think. But then again, March Madness and the college game proves otherwise. That upsets create interest. And there's enough stars in the NBA, especially when you get into playoffs, there's enough young talent there. Yeah, I can see where, for years they'd always say, oh, we need New York in, we need Los Angeles. And obviously some of the highest rating playoffs of all time had neither.
Yeah.
The fact is, I think the highest was with Michael Jordan Bulls and the Utah Jazz. I think, which was about 3 times higher than what's happened in the last year.
The Lakers are, and I know we touched on them in the crossover, the Lakers are a team that we probably have to talk about today.
Really?
And speaking of LA, I mean, how about those Clippers, Jer? Big win for them last night over I know Durant's not there yet, but that was a nice road win for the Clippers, who are a team to be reckoned with the rest of the way.
They stay healthy. They're good. They're good. And, Plumlee's going to help them. Eric Gordon's going to them. They've got a.
You ever seen anything like Plumlee going to the left-handed?
I haven't. What? I haven't. And he's. Well, of course, he couldn't. There wasn't anything to risk. He was awful with his right hand.
You could have kicked it and had as good.
Yeah, he could have drop kicked it with a higher percentage, but he's actually pretty good with it. So and he's he and Zubats. I mean, that's a nice 48 minutes center.
Yeah,
and they're both unselfish and so it really helps George and Kawhi Leonard, who don't need a lot of help. So I'm scared of them. I think they're a legitimate threat.
I like
in the
Bones
West.
Highland. Gordon fits with them. He's been there before.
I think Bones, he's going to go on his own a little too much.
Bones is going to Bones.
He's going to Bones, and I think Ty Lue will explain it to him differently as we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Sactown Sports 1140, of course. It's Whitey and Jerry in for Cattles and Ramie. Where the Kings need to improve now and how they can do that, that's coming up in 90 seconds.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
The only place you'll find Keegan Murray is Sactown Sports.
Out to Keegan Murray, straight away for 3, and Keegan knocks down the triple.
Shirt today. Forgive me, those of you watching on YouTube, welcome. Forgive me for wearing such a ratty shirt, but this is kind of it's Jerry's favorite shirt. When I say favorite, I mean he doesn't like it at all. The back-to-back Pacific Division championship Kings shirt from 20 years ago.
Yeah, time to move on. It's just time to move on. But those were terrific teams and championship caliber teams. There's no doubt. And but there was,
the whole raising of the Pacific Division championship banner.
And Shaq just made fun of us, and it really hurt. I haven't got over it yet, but and a lot of anyway, that just brings up bad memories, because that was that was a year that definitely the 2 years that really the Kings were the best team in the league,
this close.
And should have beaten the Lakers. Game 6 was an interesting spectacle, and then the next year team was probably more talented, but then Webber gets hurt against Dallas, and then so they were done that year, and then that was it. The 2-year window closed. I mean, they were still good for a number of years, but
Now we're not going to spend all day talking about Game 6, 2002, but Jerry, what do you think if they'd had the 2-minute report? What do you think that would have looked like after Game 6?
Well, they needed a 12-minute report for that, and there's no way they'd have put that out.
Right.
I
actually think that what happened in Game 6 is one of the reasons they ended up with the 2-minute report, because you remember people looked at that and said, That's not on the level. And I don't know whether it was or not, but the drum beats got so loud that the league had to address it. So I think that's one reason why they came out with it. There's a 2-minute report. See, we've got full transparency. It hasn't worked, but I think that's one of the reasons they went with that.
It may be, but you're right. It hasn't worked. It's really just makes everybody mad.
Yeah.
And really doesn't serve the officials well either.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what purpose there is at this point.
I don't know a single coach that said, oh, yeah, see, yeah, we knew it was fouled. Okay, as long as you admit it, we're fine. We feel better. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And so just get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's even like the instant replay stuff. In my mind, I wish they would maybe do less of them until the last 2 minutes, and then it'll really allow them to go replay anything that's an important play. The officials have the ability to do that.
I was talking to Steve Kerr not long ago, and Steve Kerr said, I just wish they would get rid of replay completely. I think I was asking him, well, do you think it should be where if you challenge and then you're right, you keep your challenge? And he said, look, I just wish they'd do away with it completely. But I don't think that genie's going to go back in the bottle, Jared.
Well, probably not. But I kind of agree with Steve in a sense is maybe just to where each coach would have 2 or 3 challenges, and that's it. If you don't challenge, then the call's the call.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that to me too, the way it is, it's kind of silly. Your challenge is not like, and you win, you don't get it back. I mean, to me, it's like, well, you still got it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's like rolling snake eyes or whatever. I don't know anything about that, but yeah, I mean, they can do it better. I mean, the league really needs to make some improvements in that stuff rather than having, close calls and it takes them 2 minutes and maybe still don't get it right.
Oh, yeah, they take way too long, but that's just the nature of it right now. My shirt, though, as I said, Pacific Division champions. So what do the Kings have to do the rest of this year? How do they have to get better right now, Jer, in order to make sure that I get another Pacific Division championship T-shirt that I can add to my collection this year?
Well, I think there's several things. I mean, they could, kind of hope for injuries to the opposition. That's always a key. Another thing, hope that the referees decide to cheat.
Wow. Okay. All right.
But
those things are kind of out of your control.
Well, you can't. Now, the things you might control that could help you. And I kind of, as we talked on the old fashioned 3, our little podcast deal.
Well, it's not a little podcast.
It's growing fast. Isn't it?
It is.
Anyway, and as much as I respect Coach Brown and Monty and those guys, to me, it appears that this team is not going to be a good defensive team. So my idea is to get better offensively if you can. And my mind is this is how you could. I would play Trey Lyles more minutes and play him at 5 behind Domas as opposed to Metu, because I think he creates more problems
as a stretch
5, and he has some passing skills.
Yeah.
And he's just as big or bigger.
Boy, they did pretty good for Marvin Bagley, didn't they, ultimately?
He's better than Marvin Bagley. So it certainly has been. I don't know if Marvin will ever get healthy and put it.
How about this Pepsi can, better than Marvin Bagley or not?
Some nights, if his availability, that's that's
defensively, it's a wash.
Probably. That's a shame. He just can't stay healthy. And I mean, that's nobody gets hurt on purpose,
right?
But the other thing, too, and I like Terrence Davis playing a little more. And much as I like Davion, I think it's if the goal is to get better offensively, well, then that's how you do it. You play him over Davion. I think Davion's going to be a terrific player in time, but it's just one of those things. I always say Davion kind of reminds me of Bobby Jackson when he was a young player in the league. And of course it took him about 3 or 4 years to really get it and then became terrific. And I think that'll happen with Davion.
I would humbly suggest, Coach, what do you think of this? I think for the Kings, one thing they can do to be better right now, the rest of this year, a big part of defense, of course, is defensive rebounding, and their defensive rebounding numbers early in the year were pretty high, and they've fallen off. They're not terrible, but they could improve. And I think if they can rebound better at that end, I think, a lot of successful defensive possessions end with the rebound. I think that's one area they could shore up and instantly improve.
Yeah, well, I think certainly Keegan Murray and Harrison Barnes are both capable of rebounding a little better. I don't think you could expect any more out of Domas at this stage, and then the guards. I mean, because this is a game of 40, 40 to 53 point shots, which means long rebounds. I mean, 2/3 of the rebounds, there's no body you can put on anybody. It's a reaction.
Kevon Looney, to your point, Kevon Looney, watch him. He's at the foul line, and he's like a first baseman making these great catches on long rebounds, and he gets a ton of them. And he's got a real knack for picking off those long rebounds at the freaking foul line.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, if you're shooting 25-foot shots, the carom is going to be a little longer. And so, it's just a matter of reacting to the ball. And I think certainly the Kings guards, although Fox is doing terrific, but I think overall the Kings guards could do better.
What to you has been the key to Fox taking it up another level? I know early in the year, it was hard not to notice that he was just shooting the 3-ball so much better, and that's tailed off. But he's just such a force now in a way that he hadn't been before. Some of it, I guess, is a teammate playing off Sabonis. What stands out to you as maybe a reason, explanation for how he's gotten to this point where he's in the All-Star game this weekend?
Well, I do think he's really got the confidence in knowing that he can get a pretty good shot about any time he wants.
Yeah.
And he proves it. And certainly Sabonis has been a help to him because it takes away some of the pressure on dribbling or getting his own shot sometime. And so he's got the ball with the live dribble a little more instead of using it to get into scoring position. So that helps. But I really think it's just a matter, he's mature and he knows that he's really good. And he is so quick and fast. And I've said this in the past that he should be able to get that 15-foot stop, pop, and drop about any time. And this is the first year he's really done that consistently because the defenders, they're going to back up. I mean,
you have to.
You have to. If you don't, he's going to get a layup. So they're giving him that shot because he is so quick and fast. And obviously he's terrific at it. He's as good as any player in the league at that.
I think some of that is human nature too. If you're guarding somebody and you know they're faster than you, you'd rather them take a jump shot over you and maybe make it than have them shove the ball down your throat and dunk it on you. Right. So that's part of the reason why you're backing up. Nobody wants that humiliation.
No, that's human nature, And I mean, that's one thing too, as a defender, right away if you're kind of overmatched.
Yes.
And, so that's
the alarms go off in your head. Yeah.
It's kind of like boxing. First round, if you're really getting hurt, you learn to cover up.
I'm in trouble here. Yeah. All right. Coming up next year, a lot of people think, wow, the Kings should have done something at the deadline. So will they regret not making a deadline move? That is next. Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason in for Cattles and Ramie today. Thanks for being with us on Sactown Sports 1140.
Cattles
and Ramie.
Sactown Sports. Sactown Sports goes 100. you 1 mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
In today, Kevin Michael, Whitey, Gleason, and the great Jerry Reynolds. Get ready for the big All-Star weekend. You got a question for Jer? You want to see what Jer thinks of this Kings season so far? You can always reach us at 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Shoot us a text. I'll tell you one thing. I don't know, maybe you can help me with this. It's good to have goals. I don't know if this is a goal that's really achievable, but I'm going to give it a shot, Jer. I know we're talking about basketball today, but one of my goals in the coming months is to bring you back on board as a baseball fan. I know you used to love baseball. Sources tell me, sources being you, and I know you were quite the Indiana high school baseball player. You were kind of Altuve before Altuve without all the hardware. So I know like a lot of people, baseball's kind of fallen out of your favor, but I'm going to try to get you back on board with baseball this year because, Jared, you know what? We got bigger bases. We got limited throwovers, and we got a pitch clock. So what's not to like? No shift?
Well, I like it better. I mean, I think those are
really?
all I do. I mean, I don't know why they took so long with the bases. It just for safety.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, you're talking about two big guys with 6 inches apart, on close bang, bang plays. There's no reason to have collisions there if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the catcher thing. It took only 30, 40 years to get so you didn't cripple catchers.
See, I'm still not totally on board with the new safety rules for catchers, but I know that's wrong. But if I'm honest, it's just the way I was brought up, and I just always thought that catchers, you got to block the plate. That's part of your job.
Then why can't you block first base?
Well, you can't score a run by getting to first base.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I just think, well, why not? Why can't you just block
all
the bases?
Ask Abner Doubleday. So
and
anyway,
and I never liked, of course, being high school, being an infielder. The dangers of at that time, it's like you're fair game as a shortstop or second baseman. And it's like, oh, really? And you're taught to kind of basically throw at the guy a little bit to get him down.
Low bridge guy, yeah.
But I mean,
slide.
That
was part of the game, wasn't it?
It was part of the game, and I think it can move on without it. You're like the hockey people that say fighting's part of it. Well, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I understand. I just honestly, that's how I was taught that that's part of baseball. And I know, like,
if you were taught that you needed to bring a weapon to the field, would you have thought that's okay? I suppose
it was suggested. Yeah. I never actually went that far, but I considered it. Like Cal Ripken one time was talking about, look, if guys are stealing signs back there, what would it be? Here's what you do. You tell, if a guy's stealing signs, the hitter's stealing signs, you just throw at his melon and tell him. The catcher has to tell him, like, hey, don't do that anymore. And if the guy keeps peeking, or they're stealing signs, you throw one at his dome. That's old school baseball. That's the way they did it then. And then it's like, okay, I won't do it anymore.
Well, that here again, I mean, I understand as a pitcher, why they need to get the plate and get guys off the plate a little bit.
Yeah.
Move them back. But I've never really, I just think the idea of, throwing at somebody's head or anything. I mean,
you could buzz the tower, it's not, you're not really trying to hit them. Anyway, I know I'm wrong. And I know the game is leaving those views in the dust, but if I'm honest, part of me, I always thought that was part of the, kind of the cool part of baseball. It's not an easy game, but you're right. We can be better than that.
We can. And,
yes.
It always amazed me back in the 50s when I started watching it, being a Mickey Mantle fan and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, all those guys. And they basically, at least at that time, Ted Williams, they didn't wear helmets.
I know. Didn't they have like a liner that they would wear?
I'm sure that did a lot of good.
If you happen to get hit right in that one spot.
Yeah. You'd say, well, he died, but he had the liner in there.
Yeah. You're right. Okay. You're right.
But anyway, I like what baseball's doing. I might give it but I grew up loving the game, like most kids. And then, I realized in high school that, if I played basketball, there'd be 3,000 people there and cheerleaders and things like that. And if I played baseball, mom and dad would be there and a couple other parents. So
Jerry once stole a ball from his brother Isn't that what you did in
No,
high school?
no, no. I stole the
believe that?
ball.
Yeah.
I stole the ball. Now
Yeah.
let me get this.
Yeah.
Let
Stole
you,
the ball from your brother.
No,
Okay.
I stole the ball from the opponents,
Uh-huh.
and I was getting ready to go down for the layup to get my points that I'd earned, and he was ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to throw it to him. I stole it, and so
It was a high school basketball game, right?
I was a bit selfish, and my mom, she was just irate when I got home. She said, I've never been so ashamed of you. And I said, well, there's times when you should have been more ashamed, actually.
But you did score, right?
Oh, of
I mean,
course.
who knows if you throw it ahead, maybe.
Yeah, he
bad
might have.
pass
Well, that's
or-
kind of what I told him. I said, you didn't steal it. What'd you do?
What
Get
if
out-
he falls down or something?
Yeah. And you can't shoot as very well. At that time, he was just sophomore.
Right.
You're
Oh, yeah.
sophomore. Well, get
Yeah.
out of the way.
Yeah. He
So,
should have.
so it
yeah.
wasn't one of my finer moments. I admit
I
that.
don't know. You can kind of see how maybe you did the right thing there. As long as
Well,
you scored.
It added up the totals.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. I think, is it Tin? Yeah, Tin has a question for you, Jerry.
Okay.
Tin, you're with us today, Sactown Sports 1140. It's Whitey and Jerry in for Cattles Ramie. Thanks for checking in. How you doing?
How are you doing?
Good.
I have a question for Jerry. Good. Do you guys think, or for Jerry, the noise level has differentiated before COVID, before the bubble, and after the bubble, now that everything is back? But of course, there's always going to be about half the people who still wear masks. Do you guys think it's changed the fan experience at all?
The fan experience. Thank you for the call. I love the fact that he said, I have a question for both of you guys. Well, for Jerry. For Jerry. So I'll go ahead, Jerry. Yeah. He made it clear I am not to participate.
Well, it does seem to me like it's pretty back to normal. Certainly in Sacramento, I think the fans are really involved. The place gets rocking, and I think it's the home court is an advantage, generally speaking, although the Kings have managed to lose to a couple of games that they shouldn't have, but every team does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's all back. I mean, there's some places that, their fans just aren't involved as much, like Miami or Atlanta. I think of two places that their fan experience just has never been, regardless how good the teams are.
I hadn't even thought of that. It's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of it. And I think Deuce a couple of days ago was saying that Golden One has been as loud this year as he's ever heard it. And I know they didn't have a lot of great teams since they built the place, but I don't think that's a factor at all. I don't think, that place is louder than ever.
That would be the Deuce Mason.
Yes, Deuce and Mo right here.
All right,
Sactown Sports 1140.
Okay, well, if Deuce says it, it's kind of like just.
He's probably been about every game since.
He has had. Yeah, you can't have a game anywhere
right.
without Deuce showing up.
Right.
But yeah, I think I'd agree with Deuce. I don't like to agree with Deuce all the time, but I would in this instance.
Yeah. All right. Well, we didn't get to it, so we have that coming up. Are the Kings going to regret not making a deadline move? I, for one, am in defense of the fact that they didn't do much. But was there more they could have done? What do you think? 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. And for Cattles and Ramie today, it's Whitey and Jerry, Sactown Sports 1140.
Cattles and Ramie. Live and local in the afternoon.
Always keep you on edge.
Cattles
And Ramie.
on Sactown Sports.
Ramie, Cattles and Ramie are actually basking in the afterglow of that first half of the Kings season. So they're enjoying themselves today, and so are we actually in for them. Whitey Gleason and the great Jerry Reynolds, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Let's just start, Jer, with the Kings and the deadline. And here we are looking at what the Lakers did, all right, what the Clippers did, what the Suns did. Kings didn't do anything at the deadline. Are they going to end up regretting that?
Well, first, I want you to quit calling me the great Jerry Reynolds, because my wife, Mrs. Reynolds, might be listening, and she'd be spitting up about now. And
I'm sorry.
if not gagging.
I'm sorry.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so
Needs to be said. I'll say it less frequently, but it
Okay.
still needs to be said.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, the trade deadline, I was hoping for something that might, fill in a little bit. But I mean, really, when you look at the job that Monty McNair's done, I mean, he has been pretty much on target. So I just took it as there wasn't a deal that he thought was the right deal. And the only thing worse than no deal is a bad deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just, I understand a lot of fans, for a lot of teams, frankly, they look at like, Lakers got Rui Hachimura for very little. And the Lakers also got Vanderbilt, and he would sure help the Kings. And it looks like some of the teams like the Suns, the Clippers to even a greater degree, they were able to go out and like almost handpick guys that helped them who they wanted. And it was just frustrating. How do those good teams, how were they able to do that?
Well, they do get, I think some markets have an advantage over others. And,
Sure.
And now you just don't know, to what level that those players or any player was really wanted by the Kings, or what they're willing to give up. And so, it's just speculation, but, yeah, it'd been nice to, maybe get a Hachimura. It would, or Plumlee. I think those guys could have helped, but, there again, it's at some point you got to say, well, how will it affect the chemistry?
Whose minutes are
minutes
cut
are-
if you bring in somebody?
Yeah, you got to probably eliminate somebody. So I mean, it's all that, and like it's so easy to say, well, yeah, sure, let's trade the bottom four guys on the roster and get Kevin Durant. Well, that's wonderful, except Brooklyn's not going to do that, and Durant probably not going to show. So
yeah, see, that reminds me, Jared, of the old days, like when the Kings were first here, and people would call, Dave Grosby, and they'd say, I don't know why we don't trade Ben Guillory and Michael Jackson for Akeem Olajuwon.
Yeah.
It's like, no, well, there's a really good reason why.
Well,
it just
I
doesn't work that
I
way.
always say that's the one thing I've always said and learned the hard way at times. But I mean, you have to look at any deal through the eyes of the other team. And I always,
But that's no fun.
No, I
You're
know,
right, but that's not as
it's
much
like,
fun.
well, why would they do that?
Yes.
And then if the answer is, well, I can't imagine them doing that, then that's probably not going to work. I mean, occasionally, there are win-win deals, like the Halliburton Domas thing, and then there are deals that probably are just pure wins for you occasionally, not all often. And then there's some that probably are losses. But I mean, if you can get a win-win deal, that's great too. What you don't want is to really make a bad deal.
Yeah, out of desperation.
Out of desperation,
when you
yeah.
don't need to. I think Sam Amick was suggesting on this very station that the Kings might have had a shot at Vanderbilt. Maybe they had some interest, but when that multi-team deal came together, they were blown out of the water. They weren't part of that whole package. 916-339-1140. Pardon me, 1-800-920-1140. Let's talk to Tony. Tony wants to talk Kings basketball on Sactown Sports 1140. How are you, Tony? What's up?
I'm good. How are you guys? It's
Good.
always great to hear you through. Yeah.
Great, Tony. Thanks.
I had a question. Talking about the buyouts and everything else, I've always liked Kevin Love. Do you think there would be any possibility that he would help the Kings or any other buyouts?
Thanks, Tony. The buyout market, Jer. Kevin Love.
I think Kevin can still play. I think he could help. I guess that'd be my short answer. I think there's a couple other teams feel the same way, and then it'd be up to Kevin to decide where he wants to go. I mean, I think he's more of a limited minutes guy, but he's smart. He can make threes, good rebounder for his size and everything. So he'd be a guy. If I were the Kings, I'd certainly want to make a run at him and just see what his interest is.
I was surprised the Cavs came to terms with him on a buyout. My understanding was, you know what, they're going well and he's not playing as much, but he's still part of that team and they were going to keep him. But once they let him go, what I've been reading is that he wants to go somewhere where he knows he's going to play, and presumably he'd like to go somewhere where he has a chance to win, not, win a division title, but win it all. I know the Warriors may have interest in him, but I don't know if they have minutes for him. And Miami is a team that I've heard mentioned as perhaps a real fit for Kevin Love.
Yeah, it does. That was kind of my take, is that the Miami Heat might be the best fit for him. That you never know. And it'd be even the same way with the Kings. It's like, if you got him minutes, then that means probably Trey Lyles doesn't play.
Right.
And I'm not sure how much better Kevin is than Trey right now.
Right now. Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
yes.
5 years ago, you'd been, you couldn't have said that. I mean, Kevin Love is a many-time All-Star, but everybody.
And his uncle was in the Beach Boys, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
But sometimes guys, they start sliding and they don't stop sliding. I don't think that's the case with Kevin. I think he's got some productivity left in him, but it's like Blake Griffin with the Celtics. He can still play a little bit, but that's not Blake Griffin.
Yeah. And Kevin Love's shooting has not been great this year. And I think he said he's coming out of that. He might be coming off an injury, but from the Kings standpoint, yeah, right now you're probably not going to get more from Kevin Love than you'd get from Trey Lyles. And right, Jared. And also, if you're Kevin Love, there's probably better situations for you than Sacramento.
Yeah, that's what I think he might be thinking. I don't know. He's from Oregon, so maybe he'd want to get back closer to home, which may be the Kings or the Dubs. And the thing I do like about Kevin, besides his passing, he's a terrific passer, which would fit, I think, as much as anything on any team, and he's always been unselfish. So he's a guy, if you're looking for a guy for 10, 15 minutes a game, I think just about any team should be able to, be interested.
Legend has it that years ago, the Warriors came very close to trading Klay Thompson for Kevin Love, but Jerry West supposedly talked him out of it. And it probably was good that they hung on to Klay at that time.
I would say it's very good that they hung on to Klay. And, because Kevin had a couple more really top flight all-star years, I think. But
he played for Adelman, right, in Minnesota.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. I think it was him and Rubio were like their two.
Yeah,
the best
I think at that time he was averaging 22 and
he was a monster.
12 or 13. Just really, really top flight.
You mentioned Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, Roar with us on Thursday, February 23rd. Kings host Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers. Secure your seats today at kings.com/tickets. In fact, let's see here. Caller 4 right now. Caller 4 at 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140 picks up a pair of tickets to check out the Kings hosting the Blazers, Golden One Center, February 23rd. And I assure you, Jerry, the fact that you're here and we're giving away tickets to Kings Blazers has nothing to do with the fact that wasn't against Portland that you kind of had your feigning spell.
Yeah, it was
total coincidence.
My guess is that happened before anybody currently listening was alive. But I think in 1988 or something like that, I passed out and, it gained a lot of notoriety, not the kind you want. I always say, passing out is not unusual. In front of a national audience is.
Yeah,
and,
right.
At that time, I think we were on TNT or something. So, that was interesting. And people thought I'd had a heart attack. And, of course, I didn't. And I knew when I came to, I didn't, because I didn't have any chest pains or anything. And my main concern when I first came to was make sure the trainer didn't try to give me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Jonesy,
I said, don't you put those lips on me, buddy.
Yeah. Well, that turns out, of course, it was great coaching, because inspired by that, your team went on to beat the Blazers on a Harold Presley jump.
Harold Presley, it just came up huge, as he often did, and knocked in a jumper to win the game. And I remember telling Harold very clearly, I said, I can't go through this every game to make you a hero. I said, this has got to be a one-off.
Yeah. Anyway, good luck. Caller 4 right now. You pick up tickets to the Kings and the Blazers. Coming up next, only 6 Sacramento Kings have ever played in the All-Star game. Can you name them? We got a brief history of the Kings at All-Star Weekend. That's next. Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason, in for Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports, 1140.
Cattles and Ramie. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
The only place you'll find Kevin Herter is Sactown Sports.
Herter's open.
the All-Star event's not the highlight of the basketball schedule for you, but I know you're also very pleased to see the Kings as well represented as they are.
Well, I sure am.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot to be proud of. It means it means a lot to the Kings fans, means a lot to those players. I mean, Sabonis, by being an all-star twice in the East and now once in the West, that's a very interesting statement. And then De'Aaron Fox as an emerging major star, really bursting on the scene and getting recognized for being exactly what he is, one of the best players in the league.
Did you hear Mike Brown's advice for everybody all the Kings going to their All-Star weekend? He said,
no.
He said, whatever you're in, if you're in the Rising Stars, three-point shooting, whatever it is, he said, you want to win, because if you win, you get money, and it costs money to take all your family to Salt Lake City because everybody wants to go with you to the All-Star festivities. So win so you can afford to go to the All-Star game.
Excellent advice from a very experienced coach and a guy that's been in the league. And, it kind of goes back to my mind, regardless of the money, and that's a key. But Herm Edwards, you play to win the game, whatever game it is. And that's why I don't generally like the All-Star game, because until the last 3 or 4 minutes, nobody seems to care much.
Yeah, growing up in Vallejo, I learned the game, and the way I learned basketball was that defense matters, and that was a big part of basketball is offense. So you watch the All-Star game, and it's just simply like, this is a nice show, nice to see all the great stars gathered, but they don't play any defense, therefore they're not really playing basketball.
So what you're telling me is that 185 to 178 is not your idea of a defensive game.
No, it's not. Sometimes my nephews and their dad and I will play, we want to play 2-on-2, and maybe somebody's like, I don't really want to play. We say, we'll just play all-stars. They go, okay, then you just don't guard anybody, and it's great fun. You just kind of stand there and wait till you get the ball back.
Well, and like I say, that's one of the things, if there is an advantage to getting old, is I remember when the All-Star game was really played competitively. East versus West, the players, of course, they needed the money.
Yeah.
And the winning team got more money. And so the Jerry West and Oscar Robertsons and Bill Russells and Chamberlains and Rick Barrys, all George Gervins, all those kind of guys, they lined up and went at it.
Sure. But even I know today is Michael Jordan's birthday. I mean, you don't have to go back that far when Jordan played. I mean, he certainly didn't need the money, right? But they played hard in the All-Star game even then.
Yeah, I think until probably the early 90s is kind of when it started fading away to where it became basically a layup dunk contest or a three-point shot.
Yeah.
To where
three-point contest is the best thing about the weekend to me.
It is by far the best to me because it's a legitimate skill. Mm-hmm. And so I've always watched that, not so much the dunk and in the game, but I'll watch a good bit of the game just because of the Kings players.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. You can call us, you can text us. It's Whitey and Jerry today in for Cattles and Ramie, getting ready for the big All-Star weekend. So, Jerry, I threw it out there. Not counting the two guys who will play this weekend, presumably, there have been 6 Kings who've played in Sacramento Kings in the All-Star game, and you got them all. It took you a little while to get the final one, but you got them all. Mitch Richmond, of course. Mitch Richmond, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, and 98.
Yeah, well, the Rock was special, obviously, certainly the best trade that I ever made, Billy Owens for Mitch Richmond.
Was Les Jepson part of that deal?
He was.
I thought so.
He was. And
I thought he was the key to the deal, but I think
that's what Les always said. And I said, Beth, you think so, Les? That's okay. Les, good guy.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but yeah, Mitch, terrific. At his best was, other than Jordan, I mean, he was about as good as you needed to be.
1995 MVP of the All-Star.
Yeah, he really put on a shooting show at second half. And
how did you get him? Was Don Nelson just had Billy Owens stars in his eyes or something?
I think so. It was one of those things to where at the time, as a case, a lot of people thought Billy Owens was the old say, well, he could be the next Larry Bird. Well, okay, that didn't happen.
No.
But, everybody falls in love with the draft every year, to where some of the top 5, 6 guys just aren't all that.
Yeah.
Every year. And but my thinking was, I mean, Mitch had been rookie of the year his first year. His second year averaged 22.5 points. So I said, well, I don't know how good Billy's going to be. I don't care. I know this other guy is a real star
on his way to being a Hall of Famer.
And the Kings at that time had 0 stars. So I thought, well, that'll be good. You know, if you can build a team, you better start off with somebody really good.
Yeah. That also begs the question, as you say, people thought Billy Owens would be the next Larry Bird. Has there been a next Larry Bird? Is Kevin Durant maybe? Was he the closest thing we've seen to the next Larry Bird? Closest thing.
Well,
no? You don't like
I think he's a different kind of player. I mean, I think he's more of the next Bob McAdoo, truthfully.
Sure.
You know, more like that, because Larry was such a great passer. People forget that he, you know, he might have been the best passer in the league and still get his 28 and 12 rebounds and 7 assists. And so I think that makes him different. I mean, to me, probably Nikola Jokic is the closest.
Wow.
You know, although he's much bigger and he, you know, probably slower, not as good a shooter, but I mean, his game is more like that.
So Kings in the All-Star game, Sacramento Kings, Mitch Richmond, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Chris Webber 4 times, Vlade in 01, Page in 02, 03, 04, Brad Miller in 2004. And I know you like to compare Brad Miller to a knuckleball.
Well, I was just used to tell Brad, you know, he was really good player, you know, an all-star in the East and an all-star in the West. And, you know, one of those guys that's probably been forgotten a little bit much because he was really good. Could score, rebound. I didn't have a post game, but I always said, you know, he was a little bit like the guy in Minnesota, they called a slow-mo,
Kyle
Anderson. You know, I always said with Brad, he's slower than you think. And if threw defenders off, you know, they'd come out and they, you know, they're used to guarding real quick, fast guys, and Brad be
too slow to guard.
And then, you know, I was going to say, he's like a knuckleball. You just couldn't figure it out. But, you know, so there's a lot of different ways of being good.
Yeah. And then DeMarcus Cousins also 15, 16, and 17. So those are the 6 who've been in the All-Star game. And then we have, of course, Fox and Sabonis this year. Kings in the dunk contest, Jared. Terry Tyler in 86, Kenny Smith in 90, and he was in the dunk contest later with other teams. Gerald Wallace and Ben McLemore. Sacramento Kings in the dunk contest. I don't remember Ben McLemore in the dunk contest.
Yeah, I do, because, you know, I think Shaq helped him on because Shaq was a part owner of the Kings at that time.
That's right.
You know, and so he got out there and tried to help Ben a little bit. And Ben, you know, Ben could really jump. I mean, he was probably one of the better ones that year. Kenny Smith, surprisingly, would you know, you wouldn't think about it now, but Kenny could really fly. I mean, he really could.
And then the 3-point shootout, Peja won it in 02 and 03 as a King, but he healed in 2020. Also competed, and I know we talked with Jay and Scott about Jim Less in 92. Jim Less and Mitch Richmond were in the 3-point shootout, according to my research. Mitch in 94, 1997, you know, represented the Kings in the he's known for his high socks. Walt Williams.
The Wizard.
Yes. I didn't remember that either. I liked him.
Yeah, me too. I like Walt a lot. I think he's one of those guys that had a really good career, but was capable of having way more.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think he really dedicated himself as much as he should, but was a very good player and very skillful. And yeah, I'd forgot that Mitch was actually in it. You know, I remember, of course, Jim Less, I think he finished second to Tim Legler.
And then Mitch, I think in some of those years, the 3-point line was actually shorter, remember? They actually brought it in for a few years in the mid-90s.
They had, I think I don't know how many years. It wasn't more than 2, and
2
maybe
or 3 of them. Yeah.
Couple, it was pretty. Yeah. And I always remember Sharunas Marshallonis, you know, that the Kings had that time. And he was a good 3-point shooter with that short line and couldn't really make it once you just
shot.
Yeah. You know, that was his range, you know.
Yeah. I remember Spencer Hawes telling me one time, you know, he was a good shooter, but he said, you go from college to the NBA, 23-9, he says, that's a big boy shot.
Well, yeah, and guys now, I mean, it takes a while to adjust to it, you know, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that with Davion Mitchell, you know, to where
I agree.
Takes a little more leg into the shot. And, you know, it's a process, and I say a lot of times fans kind of forget, but I was always a fan of Bobby Jackson's when he came out of Minnesota, but he just didn't have enough consistent outside shot. And so he bounced around for about 3 teams before Jeff Petrie got him as a free agent. Then his outside shot came around, and of course, rest is history. He was terrific.
Other Kings in the three-point shootout, we have Peja in 01 through 04, and as I mentioned, he won a couple times. Buddy Hield 2019 and 20, and he won in 2020. Then the Rising Stars Challenge we've had in recent years, Keegan Murray tonight, of course, Davion, Tyrese, Bogdanovich, and De'Aaron Fox were both in it in 2018 and 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isaiah Thomas 2013. I know you loved Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Like I say, Isaiah probably had, of course, he wasn't a King when he had it, but he had the best one season of probably anybody that was ever had a Kings jersey on for a period of time, when I think he was third in MVP voting, 29 points a game for the Boston Celtics, led them to a 53 win season, I think, scored 50 in a game 7 to get to the
To me,
Eastern
Jerry,
Finals.
he's like one of those guys you see in the 70s. A guy will pitch like 320 innings, have a great year, and then he's just done. And to me, Isaiah was kind of like he left it all out. I know he still played that year and he was somewhat effective, but to me, it's like that was it. He spent just about everything that year.
Yeah, there's no question the hip injury
ended
it for him, and I mean, it's sad because he never really was rewarded for that magnificent year. And he played, in the playoffs with that injury. And I think, probably didn't serve him well. But, terrific young man.
Cousin 2012 was in the Rising Stars. Cousin Tyreek in 2011, but Tyreek was injured. We had Caspi in 2010 and Tyreek were in the Rising Stars. Hito in 02. Let's see, 1998, Michael Stewart in the Rising Stars Challenge.
Yogi.
Yes. 96. Didn't you draft Tyus Edney? Did you draft him?
Well, Jeff Petrie.
Jeff Petrie did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, anyway, Tyus, that was –
and
had a short career, but, had some good moments.
In 1995 was Brian Grant, and then I skipped over 2000 because that was Jay Will and the elbow pass, which is, I don't care what happens tonight or what happens ever, the greatest play in the history of the Rising Stars Challenge. Can we agree on that?
Oh,
the elbow pass to Ray LaFrentz.
Absolutely. Jay Will, when it comes to – actually, if you just watch the highlight of Jay Will, that's enough. I mean, I watch it about once a week.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable when they – you see it on YouTube or different things. And I mean, and sometimes young fans had never seen Jason play. And, it's like, well, yeah, if you haven't seen him play, you will be amazed because he does things that nobody in the league can do now. And I mean, his handle is better, his passing ability, certainly. I mean, his pure handle might not be a lot better than Kyrie Irving, but I think it's better.
Jerry has compared Jay Will favorably to Pete Maravich with the ball handling. Right?
Yeah, he's better than Pete. I mean, now he's not 6'6", and he's not near as good offensively as Pete was, and not as good a player as Pete was. But he could do everything Pete could do and do it faster.
I find myself every time I think of that play trying to figure out what he did, because it's like, wait, what? So left hand with the ball behind the back to the right elbow, bump it on target to LaFrentz.
Yeah.
Well,
it's always amazing to me. He was one of the rare guys. I mean, he could do everything full speed with either hand. I mean, he had a great
I can't
handle.
do things quarter speed with either hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guarantee
anything.
I'd say about 80% of the players in the league off their weak hand after 2 dribbles, it's going to get ugly.
Yeah. So a brief history of the Kings at All-Star Weekend. Maybe the participants this weekend will make more history we can be talking about down the road. Coming up next, which past Kings team does this team remind you and remind Jerry of the most? The answer in 90 seconds.
Cattles and Ramie. One brings Macloff magic, while the other, we're still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
In for Cattles and Ramie today, Whitey Gleason and Jerry Reynolds. And, you say, oh, I shouldn't call you the great Jerry Reynolds. But I think one thing we can agree on when we talk about the Kings and greatness, and, of course, we talk about the past here with Jerry here today because he's been here since the beginning. How about the truly great Gary Gerald and the job he continues to do, Jerry?
Amazing.
Yes.
He's just a marvel. That's why I always remember, of course, working with him. We worked together on TV for a year. And so he's responsible for me, I think. So, so those of you that didn't like me much, it's all Gary's fault. But
and the consummate gentleman as well.
I was with him for years on the road in all different capacities, and different. You can't beat Gary Gerald. You can't. And then also the most talented radio broadcaster for basketball that in the history. I used to be, when I was doing some scouting and things, I might be in Boise, Idaho, or somewhere, or Tucson, and you could get the games at that time in many cases, or closer. And it's just wonderful how he could paint the game for you. You could sit and listen to Gary Gerald and see the game.
Yeah, I remember my dad was visiting one time 25 years ago. I don't know what it was, which just speaks to the incredible longevity of Gary Gerald. But we were driving around and listening. The game was on, and my dad, we weren't even really talking about the game. I had it on. My dad goes, man, this guy's really good. Yeah, you didn't know who it was. Like, man, this guy's really good. And I never forgot.
It's such a pro, you know. I'd on the plane, on the charter stuff, he'd sit in front of me and I'd be right behind him, so, but I'd always notice he'd spend, we'd be traveling to the next city and he's there working on his notes and stuff. And of course I'm eating and sleeping, and so, there's that.
Yeah. I remember Mata one time making a joke about it. Gary Gerald used to go to practice all the time and he missed a practice. And Mata like teasing us, like, why weren't you at practice? And Gary's like, I'm so sorry. And Mata said, it's okay. You don't even have to come to practice. But that just spoke to the dedication of the great Gary Gerald. So is there a team, Jared, that this Kings team reminds you of in any way? I have to say, for me, you could compare this player to that player. Not this team to me stands. I don't compare them to any Kings team of the past. Do you see any similarities?
Not really, except that how they've caught the imagination of the fan base, and they're good and they're fun to watch. I could on that basis maybe compare them a little bit to the very first Rick Adelman team with Jason Williams and Peja and Webb and Divac.
Yeah.
That was, basically just like a breath of fresh air, in other words, it came out of nowhere, became must-see TV, even though the team finished 7th, I think, in the playoffs that year, 27-23 lockout shortened season.
That great series with the Jazz,
with
where
the
Florida
Jazz
makes a little hook shot.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have no chance against the Jazz, and they took them to
5 games.
5 games.
5 games.
Yeah.
So that, I think there were some, on that basis, it would just really caught the imagination, and the fan base just enjoyed watching them every night. And you didn't always know what you're going to see, a little bit like this team.
Mm-hmm. Something that's happened lately in the NBA that reminds me of that team, it's not necessarily Kings related, but Alperen Şengün of the Rockets, unfortunately, he's from Turkey and they had the earthquakes. And so he's been going through terrible times trying to figure out what's going on at home, which is just awful, obviously. But it reminds me of what Vlade was going through. Wasn't it that year when Serbia, there were bombings and he had to call home after games to find out basically who was going to be able to answer the phone?
Yeah.
And he played great.
He played great. I think with Şengün, I think those guys, that's where they get where they can just focus on basketball, and their lives can have a tiny bit of normalcy to them. So it's probably a relief as much as anything, just doing what they're really good at. But then the other 20 hours a day, it's a concern.
Yeah. 1-800-920-1140, 339-1140. You want to shoot us a text. You want to participate in the program. Does this Kings team remind you of any Kings team of the past? And I think right now, probably the most pressing question, Jer, and we're trying to enjoy the All-Star break, but the most pressing question is, does this team have enough to keep this going Can they, Domantas Sabonis said, we want to finish third, improve on that. Can they end up top 4? Can they end up top 6? It's going to be a tough putt, it would appear, from here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a hater because I certainly hope
Haters going to hate.
Yeah, I mean, but I'd be surprised if they can hold a third. I would be really thrilled if they could stay in the top 6. I just think with the Suns, if and this health means so much, but the Suns and the Clippers, I think if they stay healthy, I just don't see how the Kings are going to be able to stay ahead of them. For sure, those two teams don't really.
Why you want to hate like that, Jeff?
I know,
I
know.
I'm just kidding.
But I mean, there's somebody would say that.
Yeah, I know.
That's that kind of stuff. But
I don't think the Kings are going to win every game. You're a hater.
I mean, I want them to go unbeaten the rest of the year, believe it or not. But I don't think they will. I apologize for that. I'm just fairly confident that's not going to happen.
Is it possible that to a degree they've snuck up on some teams early in the year and that ain't going to happen anymore? When you're in that position and other teams aren't sure what you're bringing every night, you can take advantage of that. But there gets to be a point where they know what's coming.
Well, and two, it's a little different now, I think, due to the play-in. There's more teams still playing. I mean, you got 4 teams that are in full tank mode. They won't say that, but that's what they are. And they're just, basically they're not playing even their best players all the time. And so, but there's not near as many as normal. And so you're in kind of a playoff run here in the last 20 some games. And then plus the fact that here, the All-Star game, there has been about 60 games played by most teams. And so, which is not quite what you'd say halfway. It's 3/4.
Right.
And so now, a Durant or whoever, if Zion Williamson can come back at some point, probably not. But if they can, they're looking at it. Well, we got to go win 15, 18 out of the last 20 some.
It's interesting what you say about the play-in and how maybe it has addressed tanking, which was the plan. I know the Commissioner Silver, your buddy, he just did an interview with ESPN a couple of days ago, and he addressed 3 things. One of them was the officiating, and what happened with poor LeBron didn't get the call. Another one was players asking for trades, and the other one was load management. Those were the 3 things. And we'll probably circle back to at least some of those. But my point is, tanking right now doesn't appear to be as big of a problem for the NBA. And I think the play-in, maybe in addition to giving us games that have been entertaining, maybe it's also worked in that regard. Maybe they did something right.
I think they did. And I'll give Commissioner Silver some props here. He has noticed that the league has got a problem with load management and players missing games and all that. And the Players Association, to their credit, has mentioned it as well. And
you're not a big fan of load management, are you?
I am.
You are a hater when it comes to.
I am a hater. I know I'm old fashioned. I'm get off my lawn guy or whatever. But I sadly I remember when all the best players really thought an obligation to play every game they could play.
Well, it's like you said, Herm Edwards, you play to win the game, but you have to play. You at least have to play, right?
Yeah. And, I look at it from, the fans' perspective too. You've trotted out there, you're paying $100 some or something for a ticket to see somebody play, and they don't play.
On the other hand, just because guys used to play 3 games in 3 nights, that doesn't mean they still should. They used to. People say, oh, they used to play 4 games in 5 nights. That doesn't mean it was a good idea. Right?
No.
So I see both sides.
Yeah, I do. But they didn't do that either. I always say that, it's like people, old timers, talking about, oh, if a guy drove baseline on me, I broke his back or something. It's like, no, you didn't. There's no record of it. You didn't do squat.
All right. Coming up next year, KD. Speaking of players demanding trades, he speaks out on the pain of Kyrie's departure, Jer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sad.
It's a very sensitive segment coming up here. He also talked about the Suns' future in the wild, wild NBA West. All that is next. Jerry and Whitey in for Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports, 1140.
time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
The battle for text of the day, Jerry, it is all over. I mean, we encourage you to give us a call, shoot us a text, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. But this text is going to be tough to top. By the way, before I get to that, I want to let you know that it's time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. The text of the day, Jer.
I need to check some of those remedies out, by the way.
I just thought I'd leave that where it is. Let's see here. This is the best show on 1140 so far, besides Carmichael Dave. Who is the guy on here? We love Jerry.
Well,
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin Whitey Gleason would be the name.
That's fine. As long as you enjoy the show. I just wish on the text line, another thing Herm Edwards said, put your name on it.
Yeah.
So you shoot us a text, just so we can give you your props.
Give your props, yeah.
Put your name on it.
That's what I'm saying. And
yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I really appreciate it. And obviously I'm carrying this thing. And
yes.
Yeah.
What up, Jerry? Legend around here. Tell us some Dick Motta stories. That's a close second. Actually, maybe I shut the door on the text of the day competition too soon.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't it wasn't a good stint for Dick, when he was here. It didn't, the one story I will remember, because Dick, had a lot of success, and I thought, terrific success with the Bulls and the Mavs and Washington Wizards, and kind of ended his career with the Nuggets and the Kings, really not on a high note, but his overall career is just terrific. But
yes, Hall of Famer.
The thing I do remember, every day one of his drills, he'd put out a folding chair, like on the elbow or
chair
somewhere,
drill,
and have the guys, single file shoot over it, because kept, and most of the guys, they'd bitch about it every day. So like, good grief, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
But Dick said, well, we did this when we won championships and whatever. And so I thought that was it. And then I always remember Pete Chilcutt. He was with the Kings the time we were playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we'd come out of the shoot around, and he was all jumping up, down, real happy. And acting like I've really done something. I said, Pete, what the hell's wrong with you? He said, well, I have just proven to myself I can score on any chair in the league. And so I thought that
Dick Motta was just the epitome of old school. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember one game, I can't remember who they played. They won, which was rare, and it was a home game, and Dick Motta was very, pretty proud. He's like, yeah, well, feeling we might win. We did really well, with chair drill today, which I was like, what's that? So went in the locker room and I asked Danny Ainge about it. And Danny Ainge's like, oh, he probably thinks we won because of the chair drill. And I didn't even know what it was, but that's you just basically shooting over the chairs, huh?
Yeah, no, it was, well, and Mitch always complained too, because he said when we scrimmage, we just play half court just about. We stop and never really get runs in and stuff, and run his offense. And Dick had a really structured offense. And I'll always remember, I think before a game we were playing the Celtics at home, and Larry Bird was out at our house, and we were talking about it, and he said, yeah, I know Motta's offense better than your players do. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said, I know where you sit. And at that time, I would sit on the
– This is a great story, by the way. This is a great story.
I would sit on the end zone, at that time. And so he knew where I would be. He said, first time they run this play, the get or something, they called it. He said, I'm going to steal the ball, and I'm going to turn and look at you. And with about 5 minutes gone in the first quarter, they ran that play. He stole it, and I mean, the players are going down. He just holds it and looks at me. And I said, blankety blank you. but I mean, that, he in truth is he knew the plays better, and half the league did too, better than maybe our guys.
Wow. Oh, that's one of my favorite Jerry Reynolds, Larry Bird stories. Although I think my very favorite one is, I remember asking you one time, when's the first you saw Larry Bird? Because you guys from the same small town. And you told me you were at a camp and you didn't know who Larry Bird was, but it was on the blacktop, and this kid was diving for loose balls on the blacktop. And you said, that kid's competitive, and it turned out it was Larry Bird?
Well, I knew who he was because it was Mark Bird, his older brother, I knew and had played with and some things. And then Larry was basically same age as my youngest brother, Randy. But so I knew who he was, but there was a camp and loose ball, and here's this guy diving for it
on the blacktop.
On the blacktop. And I said to myself, Self, this is not normal. And
very competitive lad.
But it wasn't diving for a lot of balls because you know I think one ball takes care of it once you. But anyway, that's just an extremely competitive player. There wasn't any indication that he was going to be, even the best high school player in that school at that time. But obviously he got a lot better.
Yeah. Well, we can't leave this subject of Larry Bird without mentioning on this All-Star weekend what he did during the 3-point shootout when he came into everybody, into some great shooters, right? And he famously went into all of them before it started and said, which one of y'all is coming in second? And then he proceeded in his warm-up shirt to win the thing.
Yeah. And, held the one finger up before the ball.
That's right. That's right.
Even got
on the
there.
way. Yep, I got it.
Yeah. No, wow. Larry had a lot of confidence, and I think I know why. He was really good. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, whether it's the Jordans or Magics or Birds or Jabars or LeBron or, Doncic, stars of today, that's one thing. You have to have tremendous confidence in yourself.
But it seems to me, and you would know better than I, that one of the things that really separates the elite from the elite. I mean, all the guys you mentioned, those guys that have to win. Everybody would like to win. We'd all like to win, right?
Right.
Simone would love to win. We love to win every game. Jay, we'd love to win every game. But some of those guys I have to win. Yeah. And Larry was one of those guys, right?
Well, he was. Yeah. He'd always say, I mean, everybody wants to win. He said, there's not enough players that need to win. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true.
And that's just human nature. It's not because, players are soft. Some people are just wired differently.
Well, and Bill Russell used to, when I was working for Bill and all, he'd talk about that a lot. I mean, obviously his competitive instincts were unusual, which he admitted. He said, guys like me aren't normal the way we approach things. There's nothing normal about us, but that's what it takes.
Yeah.
The talent plus the drive, and I think that's sometimes missed. A lot of guys have enough talent to be better, or maybe not Bill Russell level or Larry Bird level, but they have enough talent to be significantly better than they are, but they don't maybe have the drive.
Coming up here, we have a ton of questions from you. We appreciate it on YouTube chat. So we'll get to wonderful questions. Keep them coming. Also on the text line, 1-800-920-1140, 339-1140. And as promised here, we'll talk about Kevin Durant, and does he have what it takes? Does he have that drive to carry the Suns to the promised land? KD, on what it was like to see things break up in Brooklyn and what the wild, wild west is going to come down to. That's coming up next. It's Jerry and Whitey in for Cattles and Ramie on Sactown Sports 1140.
Cattles
and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Sacramento weather is brought to you by R.C. Willey Home Furnishings.
I'm Mark
Your afternoon home for Kings talk and more
This is Cattles and Ramie.
on Sactown Sports.
Cattles Ramie not with us today. In for them, it's Whitey Gleason and Jerry Reynolds. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be here with you, Jer, with the Kings in this fascinating position, third in the West at the All-Star break. By the way, I know we talked about this on the Old Fashioned 3 podcast, and here I am wearing my Pacific Division title shirt. But can we just get rid of the divisions in the NBA? Nobody cares. It's all you're third in the West.
Yes,
the divisions just don't matter.
They're meaningless. It's just silly. East and West.
Right.
East and West. That's
Right.
what you need.
Yeah.
Who's tops in the East? Who's fifth in the East? Who's first in the West? That's all fans need to know and care about. So yes, get rid of it. Commissioner Silver, I know you care about what Whitey and I think, and that's what we're suggesting.
Yes. Besides, it's going to be tough to win the Pacific Division the way the Clippers and the Suns are playing. But be that as it may, right?
Yes.
Especially Kevin Durant now joining the Suns. KD Jer says that the Suns have what it takes to finally win an NBA championship. I think we got all the pieces to be successful. That's what he said at a news conference yesterday. We got guys that have experienced what it's like to play in that first round. So we'll see. I think depth is an issue for them, but they've been playing well lately, even without him. If he can beat out Josh Okogie, I think they're going to be a really good team, obviously.
Well, they're going to be terrific it's all about health. I mean, probably more than anything himself, as well as Chris Paul, going through the rest of the year and the entire playoffs, because they've quite honestly been hurt a lot.
Chris Paul has been getting hurt every year since he's 33 or
so
whatever.
That's a real key. And I do think that their depth might be a little better than you think. Picking up Terrence Ross was a nice pickup. A guy that can really come off the bench and make
Campaign is coming back.
Yeah, and Cameron
Shamet
Payne
too,
and Landry Shamet. So those guys are players. There's enough depth there. I think Ochogie, to me, is a guy that actually, the way he's played, it really almost said, okay, now you got your 5, because he's a smaller. And I mean, with Ayton and Durant and Ochogie, and then of course Chris Paul and Booker, they're salty. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. KD is a little salty, but I think more wistful than salty about the demise of the super team in Brooklyn. Him and Kyrie and James Harden, remember, they were supposed to win how many championships? KD said, we just didn't get on the court enough. I think when you seen James, Kyrie, and myself, it was amazing basketball for 16 games. But in order for you to win a championship and be a great team, you just need more time on the floor. And he said that when Kyrie Irving requested that trade, right before the deadline, he said it took away our identity. I was upset that we couldn't finish. And in a way, I know that players asking for trades is an issue for the NBA. It looks bad. But in a way, I don't blame Kevin Durant for saying, well, if you're trading him, I don't want to be here anymore either.
I guess I'm not. I just think that players ought to feel a little more loyalty to the contracts they've signed. As I recall, when Kevin, basically left Golden State, as he had left Oklahoma City, he signed a new deal with the Brooklyn Nets, and he couldn't play for a whole year. And as I recall, I think they paid him every single. Did they pay him? I think they paid him.
Did. Yeah.
And so
when he couldn't play physically.
And then of course he's missed quite a few games in the last 2 years too. And so I know I'm old fashioned, but I think loyalty is, if you want loyalty, you probably ought to provide some loyalty.
Well, you may not like this then, because KD said, I get emotional talking about them because that was a special 4 years in my career coming off an Achilles, that they helped me through a lot, so I don't have anything bad to say. So he feels badly about it all breaking up, but not so badly that he's going to stick around.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't have to break up, did it? I mean,
I guess not.
Harden and Kyrie left, but I thought a couple players that they got for Kyrie, if Kevin wanted to stay there, they could make a nice run, in the East. I'm not saying they'd be the favorite, but they're not necessarily the favorite with Phoenix yet until they get on the floor. So
did you see all of the Durant jerseys in Phoenix last night?
Yeah. Well, they're excited, as they should be. I mean, they gave up an awful good player in Mikal Bridges, And,
Yeah.
so they've got some.
I was surprised he scored 42 in his Nets debut. I know he's a really good player. I didn't know he had that in him.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. And I think, that's to his credit. I think he fit in with Booker and those guys to maybe to a fault. Now he'll have opportunity to do more. Sometimes that's what happens. You can do more if given opportunity, some players, and he certainly appears to be one of those.
Do you think, Jared, that now that the Nets, they got the super player, super team, and it didn't work, do you think that teams will be less inclined to try that shortcut route? My guess is that if there's players out there and there's owners with stars in the rights, they're still going to try it. But maybe this will be a little bit of a sobering lesson for owners that might think about that, kind of taking that shortcut super team route.
I think, I do think that they'll kind of thinking about it a little more. In other words, what three are you getting? What's the likelihood that they'll mesh in all ways? That and I think it's like LeBron going to Miami with Wade and Chris Bosh. There was Wade basically after a little while really decided just to fit in, take that secondary role. To his credit, obviously, a Hall of Fame level player. Bosh was a all-star player, but with them, then he became the third guy. Well, you have to kind of have that because LeBron's going to be number one, and I think that was kind of the thing there. Well, Harden had been number one, thought even he had every reason to believe that he could be one. Durant, Kyrie left Cleveland so he could be and then Boston. So I don't know. I think really talent. It's a talent league, so you want to do anything you can to get talent, and you're always willing to take some risks. I always remember the Weber trade. It wasn't a very popular one at the time because Chris had.
I thought it was a great trade at the time.
Well, I mean, talent wise, there's no doubt, and age, because Mitch was sliding, near the end, had a couple of good years, and Chris was just really coming into his own. I thought, but he had some issues, with Golden State, with Washington, and so a lot of people I know here because of Mitch's success here, but clearly it worked for him. I mean, Chris made some adjustments. I think Blotty had a big part of it, and of course, great success followed.
The key, as you said, the key is who are the three or the two, and if Kyrie's one of them, don't do it. I mean, good luck to the Mavs. We've discussed this. Kyrie right now is going to be a motivated Kyrie. That's probably the best Kyrie you're ever going to get because he's trying to prove he's worthy of a big deal. After that, you're going to sign with a big deal? I don't know. Good luck. But the thing in Brooklyn was so upside down because of Kyrie. I'm not a big James Harden fan, Jer, but I don't blame James Harden for going, I don't want any part of this. He's got to get vaccinated to play. We need him to play, and he won't get vaccinated. I want out of here. I'm not in favor of players just, I want out of here. But I understand why Harden said, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah, I look at it a little different than I did, with him. I think basically he was, as he's pointed out, now, like he said, I think, well, it looks like it wasn't just me. And maybe he was the first to recognize that it just wasn't going to work.
We're going to get to some of the questions for Jerry, so keep them coming here. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140 on the YouTube chat. Great questions for you, Jerry. Don't worry, these are good questions.
Okay.
No haters.
No haters?
No haters. Coming up next, it's been, of course, an amazing season so far. So can this Kings team contend next year and beyond? That's coming up. Jerry and Whitey in for Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports, 1140.
Cattles
And Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Get in the zone, autos.
Sacramento, KYMX HD2 Sacramento, your home for the biggest matchups in the NFL. Sactown Sports. Sactown Sports.
Headlines.
With your Sactown Sports headlines, I'm Simone Rickford. NBA All-Star Weekend festivities tip off tonight with the Rook Keegan Murray showcasing his talents in the Jordan Rising Stars event beginning at 6 p.m. Headband Kevin Herter is going to hold it down for Sactown tomorrow in the Starry three-point contest at 5. And under the bright lights of the 72nd NBA All-Star Game, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis will run it back on Sunday with tip-off at 5 p.m. And of course, we here at Sactown Sports serve the good people of Sacramento and Kings fans everywhere, so we will have boots on the ground all weekend long. Check out SactownSports.com to follow our All-Star Weekend correspondents, Frankie Cardicelli and Chris Watkins, for the latest and greatest content out of Salt Lake City. I'm Simone. Those are your headlines. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Cattles Ramie with special guest hosts Jerry Reynolds and Whitey Gleason.
Cattles and Ramie.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
We're supposed to be catching up with Frankie and Chris at some point here. Yeah, Whitey and Jerry in for Cattles and Ramie today. Looking forward to that. They're boots on the ground, Salt Lake City. Jerry, how did Salt Lake City get an all-star game?
Well, a good question. Small market, but they have a lot of hotels, because of the resorts and stuff nearby, Park City, etc. So they had an all-star game probably 25 years ago, as I recall, and actually almost had a blizzard there. But but anyway, yeah. So that's that's always been the hang up for Sacramento. It's like Indianapolis is a small market, but they have. And
they've had Super Bowls.
Yeah. They have a huge number of and the downtown is, with the mall and everything's attached and just, hotel rooms are available. They got tons of them.
Okay. I guess it's just not to be here, is it? I know, again, Deuce was talking about this yesterday. I know he was, in a way, working with the Kings and somewhat involved in some of the efforts to convince the league that they should bring the All-Star game here, but you have to have cruise ships, and they were going to drive to Napa for some of the events. It's nice try, but it just doesn't work logistically.
No, I mean, it's too bad, because if you could, the cruise ship thing might work better than, an hour and a half drive to Napa. I don't know, or an hour at least.
Can we just have some of the All-Stars stay at your house?
Yeah. For a fee.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. If they're staying at a hotel, someone would be getting a fee. So
yeah, a little higher fee than that.
Yeah.
But,
you build a place like Golden One, which, to be honest, I had my doubts as to whether Sacramento was capable of doing that. You build that place, you deserve an all-star game. And I know it's not that simple. It's you have to have the amenities. I get that. But if any city deserves an all-star game, right?
Oh, I think absolutely the Kings and the Sacramento deserves an all-star game at that marvelous arena. But I understand too. The league says, well, we need several thousand for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. Hotel rooms. And if you say, well, we don't have them, then what are you expecting? You're not expecting people to, sleep in their cars or rent a cars or anything.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Maybe they could. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. I think we deserve that. Bring in
a bunch of FEMA trailers. That'll work.
Before the show started, I know we talked about how, hey, a lot of Kings love, a lot of Lakers hate. Haven't had a lot of Lakers hate so far from you, Jer. But I know that they're kind of lurking, aren't they? Those
Lakers? They are. And it just keeps me awake sometime, thinking about it, that they could.
They're way back, though. Aren't they 13th?
13th. And so, I don't think they can. There's no way they're going to get in the top 8. But I definitely can see visions where they might slide into the play-in, which is the worst of all possible thoughts.
Worse would be them emerging from the play-in, right?
Oh, that might be it for me. I might just have to call it quits on everything.
I guess LeBron, okay, he sets the scoring record, which is amazing, beyond amazing. But then he hurt his foot, and then it seemed like, he's not going to play a while, and they get all these new players, and at some point, they just have to win games. It seems like they're so confident that we're going to be okay. Well, you have to win some games at some point, or you're not going to climb from 13th.
Yeah, no, I mean,
That's that Laker arrogance.
It really is. It's been going on all year. It's like, well, we're going to get it together. Well, yeah, if that shows up with W's, that's called getting it together.
Maybe they think, Jerry, there's a committee that's going to say, we'll choose the playoff teams, and they have LeBron, so we're going to pick them. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Well, it hasn't. Don't say. Be careful, Whitey. It hasn't so far, but it wouldn't surprise me. Say, well, we'll have an at-large this year. I mean, so
gotta get Bronny.
Oh, I'm so cynical. I hate myself sometimes.
Did you see that Bronny and Paige's son are both going to play in the McDonald's All-Star All-America game in March?
I did.
How about that?
That is great. And I know Paige's son is signed, I think, to Stanford.
Is that Andre?
I think it is Andre. Yeah,
with like a J at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's super. And with Bronny, I don't know exactly how good he is. I think there's different variables on it. Is he obviously a great college prospect? Is he a great pro prospect? It's
amazing how large that gap is, right? From being a legitimate top college prospect, that don't make you a pro player.
No, it doesn't
necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean, there's guys who aren't considered top McDonald's All-Americans that become greats, you know? So, and I always say so many of the truly greats were late developers. Now LeBron's an exception to that. Jabbar, Magic. I mean, there's exceptions to it, but then there's the Tim Duncans and the Birds and the Elijah Wands and the Jordans. Basically, were all under the underrated there until maybe the senior year in high school or even into college.
So you said, kiddingly, of course, you said, the Lakers, the way they're playing keeps you up at night. I assume you were kidding, but the thing is, if I were, not that I'd ever be, but as you were a talent evaluator, that's the thing, the fact you just mentioned, that would keep me awake at night. Just the fact that nobody really knows, and you can be really wrong on somebody at any time and have no idea until it's too late.
Well, yeah.
It's the nature of it.
Yeah, it's the nature, and it's tougher now than ever because you're making judgments based on 19-year-olds that have played very little. And so it's always the same thing, and everybody falls in love with the draft just like they always did. But now you're saying, look how good this 19-year-old is. Look how good he'll be in 3 years. And often he isn't, that he doesn't get a lot better. And then some guy who wasn't highly thought of as, Adetokounmpo was 15th in the draft and, MVP a couple themes, and then Jokic, 41st pick, who, Steve Nash, 15th pick, Kobe, 13th pick. I mean, it's not an exception. It's almost the rule, where some of the greats of all time, the Malones, Stocktons, 13 and 14,
Kings could have had Karl Malone.
Could have had.
Didn't he think that Karl Malone thought that was your fault?
Yeah, he did. I always remember because I was always a good friend with Phil Johnson, of course, who was assistant of Utah that time, and Jerry Sloan. And I'd go in the locker room, visit with them. They didn't have secrets. They didn't need secrets against us. But when I was general manager at that time, and Carl came up and was talking about, I bet you're sorry you didn't draft me. I said, well, the team is, but I had nothing to do with it. I hadn't even been hired yet as an assistant coach. And he said, what? I said, that's Joe Axson. Oh, you're not Joe Axson? I said, no, I'm not. So I said, I'm guilty of a lot, but not that.
Dodged a bullet there.
Dodged a bullet right there.
Yeah, the Kings, of course, first year in Sacramento, playoff team, and it looked like, a lot of people who remember it know this, looked like that was a team that was built to last. Management made some moves that backfired. So 1 year in the playoffs, then they weren't in the playoffs again until 96. And then that team barely missed the year before, but 96 with Mitch, I love that team, just a real blue-collar, gritty team. But they came up short to Seattle, and then it was 3 more years until they were in the playoffs again. And that, of course, was the Vlade, CWebb core. They were in the playoffs for many years, nearly won a championship. And then you had the long gap. And here we are again. It looks like, as you said, this team in some ways is making people feel the way they did, Kings fans did, when CWebb and J. Will and Vlade were working their magic. So my question, your best guess here, Jared, this Kings team, and they haven't done anything yet. They haven't won anything yet. Do you think this team is a team that's built to last, that can compete for the playoffs, not only this year, but into the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's no player that's near the end. I mean, obviously Harrison Barnes is kind of the oldest guy that plays a lot, and he should have 2 to 3 really solid years going forward. Keegan Murray, you got to assume will get better, and he's pretty darn good for a rookie. You got to be pleased there. Domas, really should have five of his best years
There's
ahead.
your key, right? If he decides to stay or not.
Yeah, and the Kings, have every reason to believe they can keep him. I mean, he'll have a lot of teams that would like to get him, but then he's their free agent. Fox, the best is ahead. I mean, they've got some young guys. Monk, still a young player. Lyles is still reasonably young. So, you need to add pieces. And I always say that's the thing kind of has been forgotten because of the length of 16 years not making the playoffs, but going back 24 years to win that first team, it did not win a playoff series until the third year during Rick Adelman's, and people kind of forget that. And, it was, I think, Jay Will's last year with the team where they traded Jay Will and they traded Corliss Williamson and basically brought in Doug Christie and Mike Bibby.
Mike Bibby, yeah.
And so, and I've always said those two guys really weren't necessarily better than the guys they traded because both Jay Will and Corliss played on world championship teams. Corliss, a 6th man of the year with Detroit, and Jay Will is a starting point guard for the Miami Heat. But the team got better because it was a little better fit. I think what it did, it allowed Weber and Divac really to control the offense. And so
you used to talk about that a lot. You would tell us, people wonder who's the point guard. Is it Bibby? Is it Christie? And you'd say, it ain't either one of them. It's Weber, actually. They run the offense through Weber and to a degree Vlade.
Yeah. I mean, you had two guys that pretty much like Domas that you could really, and then later Brad Miller did a lot of the same things. They were probably had the 3 best passing bigs in the league at one time. And certainly during those best years, those 2 guys were terrific and they could play high-low. It's a different style of basketball. I still think maybe as pretty enjoyable game as we've seen.
Basketball was meant to be passed, Jer, not dribbled. It was meant to be passed.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like you sound like Coach Carrill. And I mean, Rick Adelman just did a marvelous job of being creative with his offense, and took some chances and had a couple of breaks, could have won championships. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, Jer. It's Whitey and Jerry in today for Cattles Ramie. Sam Amick had an interview with Domantas Sabonis in The Athletic yesterday or the day before. It was really interesting. One of the things that Sabonis talked about, was talking with the coaches about using him certain ways. And I wasn't sure which way it cut, but it sounds like he wasn't sure that he wanted to be the hub of the offense the way he is. But it certainly has worked out. And I mentioned this because I know it's something you said early in the year you would have liked to have seen more of him, almost in a Draymond Green type role, and it's been working out for everybody.
Yeah, the first I thought early in the year, I just didn't quite understand it. They didn't seem to use him that way. Of course, they lost 4 straight games, and kind of just posting him up with his back to the basket. And I said, I was saying to tell him, I don't remember who I told it to. I said, well, if they want to play
Mrs. Reynolds,
I might have told Mrs. Reynolds and some others, that like if they're going to play him that way, he'll average about 11 points a game and 9 rebounds, and they're going to win 32 games.
They were on that track. Yeah. Coming up next here, Jerry says De'Aaron Fox reminds him of which, dare I say it, Hall of Famer. That and your questions for Jerry coming up next in 90 seconds.
One brings Makloff magic, while the other, we're still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Thanks for being with us. Jerry is glued to I believe this is the Celebrity All-Star Game. Is that what your charting deflections on?
I made the mistake of glancing up at the monitor. I apologize to all those.
It's fun, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Not Jerry's favorite basketball weekend. Although, again, he's very proud of the Kings.
Proud of the
Sacramento.
Making the All-Stars is a significant achievement, but I don't have to watch the game.
Yeah. All right. You don't.
But
have to
I
watch
will
the,
because of them. No Kings were involved. I certainly wouldn't watch a minute.
But I have to say, you were almost as interested in the Celebrity All-Star Game as you were in Yale versus Penn. On the next
that
monitor.
would be a pretty close call there. Pretty close call. You are very observant, Mr. Gleason.
Yes. You said something really interesting to me recently about De'Aaron Fox. And one of the amazing things about De'Aaron Fox, a great season he's having, he's an all-star, of course, is that in the game, you notice that he gets to wherever he wants to get to for his shot. So I asked Jerry, has he ever seen anybody else do that? And your answer was really interesting to me.
Well, that's it's one of those things where I was trying to think, primarily in Kings history, during the franchise, and of course, I'm old enough to have seen them all, from Oscar in Cincinnati, great players there, to the Kansas City Kings when they had some outstanding teams, to the Sacramento Kings. I was a college division coach in Kansas City when a guy named Nate Tiny Archibald was their star. He had a one season where he led the league in scoring, 34 points, and also, I think, 14 assists, led the league in both. And at
a time when a cat named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in the league.
Yes.
So,
And it just always struck me because I'd go to all the practices. At that time, Phil Johnson was the head coach, and so it was they practiced at my college gym that I was a coach at. And so anyway, I just enjoyed watching Tiny, not just in games, but in practice. And we're talking practice. But anyway, it was just amazing to me. Nobody could guard him. I mean, in other words, it was a case where if they had a game to 5 or something, his team never lost because almost never, because he could go get shots and make plays
just because he was so quick.
And, it was very much like, remind me a lot of, or Fox remind me a lot of him, because he could get
amazing.
He could get that 10, 15 foot shot anytime he wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And defenders played him the same way. They're so scared of him getting past him, they'd give him that extra 5 foot of space. And just like Fox, and I'm not saying Fox is Nate Tiny Archibald Hall of Famer yet, and a lot of fans wouldn't, old or younger ones wouldn't remember Tiny. They remember him playing for the Boston Celtics at the end of his career, and he wasn't the same player. He went through Achilles injuries and knee surgeries, and he was still good enough to, be a starting point guard on a world champion, but he was just amazing, and I see a lot of the same things.
I'll say this, Jer, I'm very familiar with Nate Archibald, who he was. That said, I don't think I got to see him play very much because they weren't on a TV very much.
No.
Later on, like say when he was on the Celtics, but Nate Archibald, Kansas City, Omaha Kings, I knew who he was and I knew those numbers, but I really think it back, I don't think I had a chance to watch him play, which to me is one of the good things about the NBA now, if you like the NBA, because you get to see everybody play.
Yeah, you didn't really get to see anybody much then. I mean, there was just no
Lakers, Knicks, Celtics.
One game a week or something. And, like I say, when I was growing up, you'd see it'd be Celtics, Knicks every week. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, they might let the
There's Willis Reed again.
Yeah,
he's great.
They might let the Philadelphia Warriors at that time in there occasionally or somebody. But so very different. It's really too bad because that was just the way it was. And local broadcast, they might have maybe most of the road games, but never any home games on.
Never
a home games because they're trying to sell tickets.
Yeah, I know growing up in Vallejo, the Warrior games would be on like when they played Milwaukee or the Knicks or the Lakers, but it's not like, if they were playing Kansas City, it wasn't necessarily going to be
Yeah.
on the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I was going to say a lot of really great players. I mean, I think George Gervin, very few people saw the Iceman play, consistently.
I'll tell you what was a great basketball program that not a lot of people got to see was the Jerry Reynolds show on Channel 31, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of people didn't see it. Yeah. I didn't. I mean, it was short-lived. Channel 31 at that time did the Kings games, and so they had the show, and so we did. Grant Napier was the host, and then I'd get guests, and we'd kind of like what we're doing here, only wasn't near as much fun. And
Jerry brought in a picture he has of it as him and Grant Napier and Larry Bird just sitting there, and you look like you're just like, I got to get out of here.
Well, it was I know it was like, Larry's nice enough to come on, we didn't pay anybody anything. But I told him I'd take him to lunch but I think my thoughts at that time is like, as much as I liked and admired him, I knew we were going to play him the next game or next night.
Right.
Yeah. And so I knew kind of what was likely to happen, and so there's.
Did you think he might take it easy on you if you took him out to lunch?
I knew damn well he wouldn't. No.
Yeah.
So.
And not only are you from the same town, but I guess he felt that you were the first that kind of gave him the thought that, wow, I could really do this, huh? But
I don't think he gave that any thought.
I thought you said that you told me once that you kind of recruited him, or the fact that,
I did. I was, when he was a junior in high school, he was 6'3", about 160. But I saw him play. They had played a really good high school team, and I went to see him play. Or so really, there's another guy, a senior, I went to see play, but I wasn't that impressed. But I saw Larry, and I thought, my gosh, he can really play. I didn't think in terms of pro, but I was thinking
in terms of maybe the greatest. One of the greatest.
I was thinking, that he might play at the West Georgia University where I was at that time. He could play eventually. I didn't think it was, but junior. So I started recruiting him. My younger brother Randy was there, and he'd take him propaganda. And I know Larry had always said that meant a lot to him because he knew, at least somebody thought he was going to be good. Now, of course, then next year he grows to 6'7" and averages 33 and 20, and then then another year goes another 2.5 inches. So anyway,
people forget how big he was. Here are some questions from the YouTube chat. Thanks for watching. Again, you want to participate in the program, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. I think a lot of fans don't understand chemistry, how important it is. So the fans who are frustrated with the lack of no trades over the deadline are what? What's your guys' thoughts on that, Jared?
Well, chemistry is extremely important, and I think they have great chemistry, and that's what you risk when you bring somebody in that might take a position, so to speak. So you have to be really careful. I think that's it's hard to get great chemistry, and the Kings have it. I always remember the great Al Attles when he coached he'd coached a championship team with the San Francisco Warriors that time in '75. And the next year, they were probably better, but didn't this. But then I remember him talking about, he said, the thing about chemistry is you don't always know how you get it, and you don't know how you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a little truth in that. And so to that question, it's like, boy, when you got it, be very careful.
Jerry, being from Indiana, are you a Cubs fan?
No, but my dad was. My dad was a huge Cubs fan. He listened to all the games, and we were Southern Indiana. That's a long way from Chicago, but my first game I ever saw in baseball was the Cubs and Milwaukee Braves that time. And my dad was a huge Hank Sauer fan, who was a star there for the Cubs at that time. And so naturally, being kind of a pain in the butt, I became a Milwaukee Braves fan. And Eddie Matthews was my hero. And I remember Hank Aaron was a rookie that year.
Oh,
in
yeah.
1954.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
you picked a good time to.
Oh, I was a Braves fan.
Jump on that bandwagon.
And they won championships in '57. Then when they moved to Atlanta, I turned on them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So your dad was a Cubs fan, takes you to see the Cubs and the Braves. So you're like, yeah, Dad, I'm a Braves fan now.
Well, I didn't tell him at the time. But no, well, Dad was. I mean, he always would tell me. I'd always ask him, "How can you be a Cubs fan? They never win." He said, "Let me explain something to you. I'm a Cubs fan. That's it. I don't have to explain anything more to you."
All right. Jer, are you up for helping Commissioner Silver with some of the problems the NBA is having these days?
I would be happy to lead a committee.
All right.
Or just act as a dictator or
that might
czar.
Be better, because otherwise the committee's you and me. So I think maybe the dictatorship is a better way for you to go. Dear Commissioner Silver, help us help you. That is next. Jerry and Whitey in for Cattles and Ramie.
Cattles and Ramie. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown.
With your Sactown Sports headlines, I'm Simone Rickford. NBA All-Star Weekend festivities tip off tonight with the Rook Keegan-Murray showcasing his talents in the Jordan Rising Stars event beginning at 6 p.m. Headband Kevin Herter is going to hold it down for Sactown tomorrow in the Starry three-point contest at 5. And under the bright lights of the 72nd NBA All-Star Game, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis will run it back on Sunday with tip-off at 5 p.m. And of course, we here at Sactown Sports serve the good people of Sacramento and Kings fans everywhere, so we will have boots on the ground all weekend long. Check out SactownSports.com to follow our All-Star Weekend correspondents, Frankie Cardicelli and Chris Watkins, for the latest and greatest content out of Salt Lake City. I'm Simone. Those are your headlines. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Cattles Ramie with special guest hosts Jerry Reynolds and Whitey Gleason.
Live and local in the afternoon.
They always keep you on edge.
Cattles
and Ramie
on Sactown Sports.
Great to be here, Jerry. What so far? It's Whitey Gleason, Jerry Reynolds. What is your favorite part about the celebrity game? Is it the blue basketball or the traditional Ruffles 4-point line?
I think that my favorite part will be there will be an end.
There's an air ball by, I'm not sure which celebrity that was.
Yeah,
DK Metcalf's out there, I know. So,
I mean, okay.
Giannis is, I think, coaching one of the teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I said, there'll be an end.
Okay. Appreciate all the feedback. Going to get to the phones in just a moment here. I want to mention this question for Jerry because it comes via the great Joe Davidson.
Joe Davidson.
Yes. Thank you, Joe, for the kind words. He says, ask Jerry who his favorite musical artist is.
Well, it probably changed over the years. Probably for a long time, it was John Mellencamp.
I think that's what he was hoping you would go with.
Yeah, John Mellencamp. Obviously, Seymour, Indiana. Johnny Cougar. I went by for years. I was a student at Vincennes University when I was there. Last year.
Life goes on.
Yeah, well, it's better than that. But
just giving some people an idea who we're talking
but
about.
But I thought, probably I'm kind of getting into Chris Stapleton a lot.
Oh, yeah?
And I still love.
But you didn't teach Chris Stapleton tennis.
No,
as you taught
no.
John Mellencamp.
John Mellencamp. But John didn't stay long. I think he had better things to do.
Yeah.
And obviously, has had a marvelous career.
Yes.
And so there's that.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Jerry. We're going to get to some ideas to have about Commissioner Silver in a moment here, but phone's backing up on us, and we appreciate that. So let's go to Allie. Allie, you're on with Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason, Sactown Sports 1140. What's going on this Friday?
I think you guys have a great show, first of all. And my question is, do you think Kyrie Irving is can you see him going to the Lakers?
Thank you, Allie. What do you think, Jer? Kyrie finally back with LeBron to the Lakers.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. He'll be a free agent. So, I think that's probably in his both thoughts there. And certainly we know he can play well with LeBron. Whether it could work for him, I don't know. I think the thing with Dallas is I think he's going to play very well for Dallas the remainder of the year. And then whether the Lakers want to try to sign him, I don't know really what kind of room they'd have to do it. And
let me ask you this way, given what we know about how you feel about the Lakers, you despise the Lakers. Do you hope they end up with Kyrie or not?
I'm mixed. I'm scared. The guy is so good, and LeBron. If there's a guy he can play with, it'd be LeBron. I think. Even though LeBron's not quite what he might have been 6 years ago all around, but Kyrie's a marvelous talent. There's no doubt about that.
Thing could go any which way, huh?
And I think I think he'd probably like to go there, but there again, unless it's some sort of sign and trade kind of thing. I mean, I don't think the Lakers have room to sign him, where the Dallas Mavericks can go over the cap to sign him if they so choose.
I think Mark Cuban is too smart to hitch his wagon to Kyrie, but I don't know. I mean, I know he's phenomenal. Phantom always tells me, he's that good. I guess so. I just would never do it. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Clinton with us today on Sactown Sports 1140. Happy Friday, Clinton. What's going on?
Hi, you too. Yeah, Whitey, I was a big fan of yours on the Rise Guys, and it was a shame that show was canceled a while ago. And Jerry, you're always great on the radio.
Thank you,
So
Clinton.
I want to give you that compliment.
I like the fact that Clint says, I was a fan of yours.
Yeah,
With me,
well,
not you.
Well,
But
I know.
It was canceled.
Well, Clinton's right, and
Yeah.
I was a fan of yours too.
You were?
Whitey.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that was a great show, and it's too bad it was canceled.
Oh, well. What can we do for you today, Clinton?
Okay, well, as far as the Kings, I just don't want to see a repeat of the 18-19 team because they've been kind of similar to this team up to this point. And like I said, the 18-19 team were a couple games over 500 at the All-Star break, and then they just nosedive. So I'd just be happy if that doesn't happen to this team.
Gotcha. What do you think, Jared?
That's a great point. I mean, I've thought of that too because that was Dave Yeager's team, and they played so well early, and then kind of went down the tubes. Just didn't really seem to get along at the end.
Didn't it all turn when they traded him on Schumpert? Or am I imagining that?
Yeah, I think you're imagining things, but I mean, some of it did happen, but I've never quite thought that. I think it was a combination of things. I think there was rumors that the Kings were looking around at other coaches, and I think it really affected Dave.
They'll undermine your coach.
A little undermining of the coach, and that certainly didn't work well. And I think it affected. I always thought Dave had a terrific staff of assistants, and I think it just affected everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so it became a little bit of a negative thing when it didn't have to be. No reason for it at all.
Like an unforced error.
Right? Huge unforced
like you just
error.
dribble the ball off your foot.
Yeah, it's like, hey, things are going pretty good.
Let's see how we can screw it up on our own.
Well, it's one of those things that's like, sometimes people will say, well, as far as I was concerned, they were playing as good as they could play. Now, somebody else might say, well, they could, different coach, they might win 10 more games. Well, no. You just simply don't know what you're talking about. They were overachieving.
It is interesting.
Pretty much like this team, really.
Yeah. It's interesting how many former Kings coaches you see now watching League Pass on other benches. And Dave Yeager with Philly now, right?
Yeah, he's assistant, Doc Rivers' top assistant to Philly. And they're kind of about everywhere. To somewhere.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Let's get to Nick on Sactown Sports 1140. What's up, Nick?
Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, Jerry Reynolds? And I do want to say, that remember Jerry Reynolds used to say, "Holy moly, Jim Bob Bully."
I did say that once or twice. I sure did.
And I do want to say, do you think with Kevin Huerter, when he's going to shoot the 3-point contest, and with the Kings coming back on the 23rd, do you think that we're going to make the playoffs this year?
Can you hold on to your answer for there, Jerry?
I can. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, Jerry will answer that when we come back. Also, wait a minute. Teams still want this guy, and we want you, by the way. If you'd like to participate, shoot us a text, give us a call, participate on the YouTube chat. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Jerry and Whitey in for Cattles and Ramie.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Thank you for all the kind words. Hearing a lot of kind words, Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason. That tells me one thing, Jer. If people are saying nice things about the show, it's holiday weekend and people have started drinking already.
I would, yeah, it's a little scary.
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, they've they definitely are at least drinking too much coffee. Something
maybe isn't right, but we appreciate it nonetheless. You want to reach out to us and participate, we'd appreciate that. We could use some help, right? You can reach us on the YouTube chat, of course, or 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Nick just asked the question.
Should I answer Clinton?
It was Nick, though. I think it was Nick asked the question.
Oh, yeah.
Clinton was before Nick. And Nick wanted to know something about Kevin Huerter's three-point shot this weekend, and will the Kings make the playoffs?
Well, Nick, Kevin Huerter is an awfully good shooter. If I had somebody said you got to bet the farm, I would not bet the farm on Kevin. I think he's a little more of a jump shooter, which takes a lot more legs, and I think might wear down a little bit compared to some of the spot shooters like a Buddy Hield, like a Damian Lillard. I think they might be a little tougher in that situation. Will the Kings make it? Well, I really believe they will. I certainly believe they will. I think the schedule's really tough, but the chemistry and the talent, if they stay healthy, I think it comes down to health. You can't lose Domas or Fox in particular for any length of time.
You like my idea about the three-point shootout, that maybe just a little adjustment we could make is rather than taking the ball off the rack, guys could bring their own people out, just like in the home run derby, you have your batting practice coach, so players could catch and shoot, maybe someone pass them the ball rather than pull it off the rack, which isn't really a basketball skill.
I would be okay with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because it really is. You'd like to see guys catch and shoot like they do in a game, and it really is a more natural thing. And probably most guys would probably do better that way, really.
Right.
And
I would think that would be really weird to,
Well, I always said it's like the dunk contest. I mean, they got to get rid of, be the same thing. Maybe have a guy pass them the ball, with one, so they can take one step and dunk rather than run 10 steps before they get there.
We'll get back to the phones in just one moment. First, this question for you, Jerry, from the YouTube chat. Jerry, do you still take walks? And we used to hear about, when you did the Kings games, we'd hear all about your walks throughout the NBA cities.
Yeah, I walk every day unless I'm, really incapacitated.
Yeah.
So for anywhere from 40 minutes to 75, depending on the mood. And sometimes, I have to turn on the Rolling Stones or something to get going.
Ooh, wow.
Something like that to get a little juice going.
Yeah.
A little John Fogerty. There's things that, I sometimes need. Otherwise, Adele will work for me, or, so I've got my strategy. I got, you got to have strategy. You just do. Yeah. And I've got it.
Brilliant. Well, yeah. Thanks for the question. Let's try Brock here. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Brock, you're on with Jerry and Whitey. What's going on today?
Hey, Jerry. I wanted to ask you about something that nobody's really mentioned, and that's the incredible way Sean Marks was able to keep it secret that he was going to put Durant out there and get high price for Irving first, the tougher guy to trade, and then get a high price for Durant. I thought he did great. And so from a general manager perspective, did you ever have anything where you had to really lie to people or keep stuff quiet?
Not like that. I mean, you tried to keep things quiet for sure, but I really tried not to lie. I mean, to be honest with you, I always think with players or anybody, honesty is the best policy. But to your point about Sean Marks, I agree 1,000% there. For him to do what he did under those circumstances, I think it's remarkable. That's a nice team going forward, and they'll have some room to do other things. But Finney Smith and Mikal Bridges, I mean, they've got some nice pieces to go with them. I like where they're going, and like I say, it was a case where they could have been just totally devastated, but I think they got a chance to stay 4th or 5th in the East at the worst.
Yeah, Paul, I don't know if this addresses your question at all, but talking about GMs in a position to lie, I know of a GM, and we all know who it is, but I won't say who it is. But apparently his wife received a call once from a reporter and felt the need to give some information that wasn't accurate. She was just trying to be protective. And when the GM found out, he told her, we can't do that. You can't lie to the media. Obviously, coaches, players, you don't always tell the whole truth. But I thought that was amazing, and he told her, like, no, we can't do that because it's slippery slope once you start down it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's like I say, rather than lie, just don't. I can't talk about that.
Yeah, yeah,
and try to be as honest as you can. And I always said before with players that were rumored to be traded, I always felt like if it was true, I would go to them that we are discussing it, and I'll let you know if there's something happens, but don't anyway. For just like anything, we all probably have told some, but I think as a practice, it's the wrong practice.
I'll tell you what, I was thinking of this yesterday because Steve Kerr now has been talking about James Wiseman, and people are asking, how come he's not here anymore? And basically, the way I see it, there are reasons. Steve Kerr can't come out and say he just wasn't good enough, right? He does not want to say that. He doesn't want to denigrate a young player. So how do you say it? And he says, well, he just didn't play enough. And then people say, well, how about the other guys? Why did they play more? And the bottom line is James Wiseman wasn't good enough, but he can't say that, right? It doesn't do him any good.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't help. I mean, you can dance around as much as you can. I do think with the Warriors, I think there was a couple of reasons, probably not just playing skill, but they saved
yes, that's another thing you want to talk about.
50-60 million dollars
about
on that.
$7 million this year and $30 million next year.
Okay, so that always enters into it. Because, any team, if you think you can, improve your team or stay the same even and move a player, I think that probably was Monty McNair's thinking with the Bagley trade. I don't think he may have felt that Lyles would be more productive. Which he is, but I don't think that was that was a secondary part of it.
Yeah. Jared, what's going on in Detroit? Because James Wiseman was a very disappointing number 2 pick, the most disappointing number 2 pick since Marvin Bagley, and now they're teammates.
Well, they've got an awful lot of top 5 picks on that team to be where they are.
Good luck.
Which I mean, that tells you sometimes, obviously, they've had some injuries, but it's I don't know where they go. I really don't know where they go. And maybe they get Wembanyama, and then they can have all the big guys. Of course, he's a little better prospect, I think, than the other two.
By the way, speaking of the draft, I think Scoot Henderson, I think he's in the Rising Stars game. So he right now is considered the number 2 pick behind Wembanyama, but he's actually, I believe, supposed to play in the Rising Stars game.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
He's just watching him on TV when the Ignite G League team played against Wembanyama. Obviously very impressive. I have noticed he really doesn't shoot the 3 well.
I know,
even 28%. So, even
his proponents say, well, he didn't really shoot well. Well, that's kind of a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal. Kind of honestly reminds me, a lot of Derrick Rose when he was at Memphis his freshman year. And of course, this guy's same age, great athlete that couldn't shoot well enough at that time. Now he got so where he could shoot well enough. Of course, you see Derrick now, but I mean, he was an MVP and this kid. But he's going to have to learn to shoot better.
Let's squeeze in one more here. Paul joins us. Sactown Sports 1140 339 1140 1-800-920-1140. How are you, Paul? More importantly, what can we do for you today?
Gentlemen, happy Friday. Woo! And I just wanted to call, and I'm a former Rise Guys listener, so what an honor, privilege, and a blessing it is to have both of you on the radio today. It's a surprise for me, and I just wanted to call and say hi, and I really enjoy you guys.
Well, thanks, Paul. It was a surprise for us too.
Yeah, a little bit surprised. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. We're happy to get out of the house, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, we're kind of on like the radio equivalent of the 10-day contract, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. We can put on waivers at any time.
Yes. We're thrilled that Cattles Ramie, some well-deserved time off, and they asked us to fill in. So Thanks for participating. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. So we still got to talk about teams really still want this guy. We got to help out Commissioner Silver, and Kings third in the West at the break. The most encouraging thing about their great start, that is next. Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason in for Cattles and Ramie.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to
KHTK AM HD1 Sacramento, KYMX HD2 Sacramento.
From the Power Business Technology Toshiba Studios, your local sports leader in the 916. This is Sactown Sports. Sactown Sports.
Headlines. With your Sactown Sports headlines, I'm Simone Rickford. NBA All-Star Weekend festivities tip off tonight with the Rook Keegan-Murray showcasing his talents in the Jordan Rising Stars event beginning at 6 p.m. Headband Kevin Herter is going to hold it down for Sactown tomorrow in the Starry three-point contest at 5. And under the bright lights of the 72nd NBA All-Star Game, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis will run it back on Sunday with tip-off at 5 p.m. And of course, we here at Sactown Sports serve the good people of Sacramento and Kings fans everywhere, so we will have boots on the ground all weekend long. Check out SactownSports.com to follow our All-Star Weekend correspondents, Frankie Cardicelli and Chris Watkins, for the latest and greatest content out of Salt Lake City. I'm Simone. Those are your headlines. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Cattles Ramie with special guest hosts Jerry Reynolds and Whitey Gleason.
Your afternoon home for Kings talk and more.
This is Cattles and Ramie
on Sactown Sports.
There's nothing like Kings Talk with Jerry Reynolds. Great to have Jerry Reynolds with us today. Whitey Gleason, Jerry Reynolds in for Cattles and Ramie. And as I said, well-deserved time off for them. I suppose. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think they probably deserve it. We don't know. It could be they don't at all.
They work hard. I know that. I know they work hard.
I think we have to hold our judgment a little bit.
But anyway, this is such a special occasion with the Kings third in the West, and then to have you here, Jared, it's been tremendous to this point. We still got some pizza left in the box.
Yeah, we do, and hopefully we'll finish strong.
Yeah, we got some questions left for you here on the YouTube chat. Does Jerry wish he was still commentating during this playoff season? It's an interesting question.
Well, that's thanks. I mean, I guess the answer would be no. When I retired, I was pretty comfortable with it. I mean, I just got tired of the travel. I mean, it's just a case where, my age, diabetes, different things. I just didn't fit me anymore.
And you are still analyzing the game, just different.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I did do the kind of the pre and post game thing for a couple of years with home games, and that worked. That was nice, but I didn't have to travel. So I guess to answer your question, it was so much fun doing it. I mean, obviously Grant was a real talent. I just kind of try to chip in there, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, but just the travel. So, and plus, hey, one thing about getting old, I have found out is that it doesn't take near as long to get old as I thought.
Well, I know you're doing the Old Fashioned 3 podcast. I know you're doing King's Herald. And I know I can tell from the look on your face. I think we can all tell, Jer, you just wish you were doing the commentary for this Celebrity All-Star game with Team Dwayne. Oh, there'd be Team Ryan. No, it's Team Dwayne back on top, 33-32, this topsy-turvy affair.
I'll say this. There's been a time in my life, poor money, I would have gladly done that. So
What is with the blue basketball?
I don't know.
It's Salt Lake City. They used to have an ABA team. Bring out the red, white, and blue
red,
ball.
white, and blue ball.
An homage to their ABA history.
In honor, because the ABA really had a lot to do with the NBA succeeding going forward.
Yes,
truthfully.
Yes. Do you think the Ruffles 4-point line, you see that maybe making its way into the NBA someday?
Sadly, it might. Sadly, it just might.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Before we get back to the Kings, let's go to Rich on Sactown Sports 1140. Thanks for hanging, Rich. What's on your mind today?
Hey, I didn't have to hang for very long. Thank you guys for picking up.
Yep.
I'm an old Sactown native, and I used to listen to your guys' show, the Rise Guys. In fact, in the playoffs where we went to the Western Conference Finals with the Lakers, you guys sent my wife and I for a game down there, overnight accommodation.
Yeah.
And we went in there with our Kings jerseys on. My wife's sitting right here next to me. I'm in San Diego right now. We live here. And we're reminiscing about that trip, man. And that was just so awesome. And we were at that game where we won.
Awesome.
And I believe
Good job by you.
I think that was game 3 or 4. I'm not exactly certain.
Yeah, game 4.
But it was in that. Yeah, I think it was game 4, and it was that playoff series. And so it's a great memory, and it's just really nice to see, to hear you, not to see. Well, I see you I was watching you on YouTube, so I did see you.
Awesome.
And then also, I wanted to ask Jerry. I was just curious because he was talking about, listening to his music when he goes on his walks and this and that. Did he ever get a chance to see the Rolling Stones?
No, I didn't. This may sound a little bit strange, but then again, I am a little strange. I was never a Rolling Stones fan when they were really in their prime. It's one of those things that I was more in the Beatles, and but now I much prefer the Rolling Stones. So it's like a lot of things. It's kind of like Elvis. I love a lot of Elvis's stuff, especially the gospels. He's just a marvelous gospel singer.
Yeah.
But as a kid, when he was at his prime, I was a Ricky Nelson fan, and so I would kind of resented Elvis. So sometimes you kind of grow up, and then it's just talent. Try to appreciate talent for being talent.
2 things. Rich is obviously a very smart man. Did you hear where he said he's calling from?
No.
San Diego.
Ooh, that is smart.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like,
that is
wow.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
San Diego. Well played.
That is about as good as it gets down there.
The other thing, you mentioned the Rolling Stones. If the Rolling Stones were in my garage, the only reason I'd go out there is to tell them to knock it off.
Oh, geez.
That is the only reason I'd even go out there. Only reason I'd open the door. Keep it down or go to the neighbor's garage.
All I know is when they hit start me up, baby, you start up. And my neighbors see that pace pick up. I mean, I'll probably go damn near a mile an hour.
I would say if Keith wanted to play guitar a while, that's fine. But the rest of y'all, I mean, it's not even the real band anymore. So anyway, you mentioned I'm more of a Beatles guy than a Rolling Stone guy. Anyway, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Maybe the Eagles too would be another band. Like, hey, no, not in my garage.
Yeah, the Eagles. Yeah, the Eagles. I like the Eagles.
You like the Eagles?
Like the Eagles. Creedence Clearwater. I love them.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, the best thing about the Kings right now, to me, the best thing about the Kings having this wonderful season to this point, the best thing is that you can look at them and say reasonably, I think they could play better. In my opinion, I'm not saying they're going to win more games necessarily. I think it's going to get tougher, but you look at Keegan's growth, you look at the potential to play better defense. I think their home record, I know a lot of people talk about this. Scott Marsh was talking about this today. I think there's the potential to play better at home. So to me, I look at them and the record is probably, they're a little over their skis, but I don't think it's unrealistic to look at this team and say, I think they can play better.
Well, I think they can, and I think they're going to have to. I mean, that's the other side of it. I think with the schedule they've gotten and how much better teams in the West some of them have gotten. So I think they'll have to play a little better, and I think they can. If Coach Brown asked me my opinion, I would say, maybe try a little more zone defense and play Trey Lyles more, Metu less, maybe Davion less, Terrence Davis more, and just be better offensively.
Here's a question before we get back to the phones here from the YouTube chat. Thank you. What teams are the best matchups for the Kings in the first round of the playoffs to play, Jer?
That's a great question.
Would you want to play the Lakers in the first round?
No, not really.
You don't want them anywhere near. You don't want the Lakers anywhere near.
No, it's just too much of a risk. I mean, and they might be the best team to play. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
It's not like there's pushovers in there.
No, I mean, anybody you get's going to be pretty good. Probably without Zion, if the Pelicans made it, I think they might be my choice.
Mm-hmm. They still defend well. There's something about that team.
Yeah, that's a good young coach down there, Willie Green. And, I think with Ingram back, I think they're still a very good team. But I think, of course, if they get Zion back for any length of time, they might be able to make a little bit of a run. I don't know.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Mike joins us on Sactown Sports 1140. Hey, Mike, what's up?
How's it going? Happy to be on the show. Just a couple things I'd like to ask you guys. One is, what do you guys think about a front court change of pairing Sabonis and Holmes together? And what do you guys think about Lynn getting a little more action against big like Ayton, the really big talented seven or, center spot?
I think those are great questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what wasn't Jerry? And then Jerry, one more thing.
Yeah,
I went up, listening to the Kings. You and the Bibinator.
You know what? We have to let you go. I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Apologize, Mike. We'll get to your first question. Sorry, you were just breaking up here. Sorry about that, Jer. But those are interesting questions. Sabonis, Holmes, and Alex Lynn getting a little more playing time, Coach. What do you make of those things?
Well, I mean, I've never quite understood the Rashawn Holmes thing. I mean, I think when he's played pretty well, that Laker game in particular. But I think at some point you probably look at what Mike Brown is trying to do. And it seems like he really does prefer to go smaller and more versatile. With a smaller team that can shoot the three ball, spread the floor better. And so on that basis, I doubt he's going to change now. It's not, and those guys can play. I mean, they're NBA players and they've proven that. But
I think it was before the trade last year. Pardon me. John Hollinger said, and I agreed, that Rashawn Holmes is like the best backup center in the NBA. But
yeah. I mean,
not here.
I mean, there's an awful lot of teams he would play on, I think. But I mean, I'm at the stage where I kind of go along with the coach. The success is success.
Yeah.
And the style is their style. And I think with Domas, they were trying to play as much like Domas when Domas isn't on the floor. That's pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of why he's going with the guys he is.
Yeah. So if you took out, you're playing Phoenix and Ayton's going off, and you took out Sabonis and you bring Len in, you're potentially hurting yourself at both ends.
Yeah. I mean, certainly an Ayton is going to score on whoever, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that good. So yeah, it's a conundrum as it were. I mean, I think that's, if it were me, I mean, don't get me wrong. I could see playing Holmes, but if I was going to play him when he came in, I would play him different. I'd say we're going to do a lot of high screen rolls, things like that with Sean.
All the Sabonis stuff, we're not doing that with him in the game.
Yeah, he's basically getting, basically as a high post mover of the ball and screen setter and all that, and playing off of others. But I mean, Rashawn can't do some of that, but he was very effective in the high post as a screener and going to the basket or a little stop and pop. He had the little step back shots,
sure,
off screen and roll.
Yeah.
So to me that, and I think probably the coaches decided, well, I don't want to change how we play for 15 minutes. And I always said Larry Brown taught me a lesson there from Detroit. He said, like with Corliss Williamson when he had him, he said Corliss really couldn't do some things that their other guys could do, but when he put him in a game, they went to him to score. They'd play him 15, 20 minutes and get him 12, 15 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that's what he can do in the low post. He was a tough cover. And so I was, we'll play the way we play for 35 minutes, but with Corliss in there, we're going to play a little different.
We'll get right back to the phones, and Jerry puts the Sabonis versus CWebb debate to rest. That's coming up in 90 seconds.
One brings Makloff magic, while the other, we're still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
In for Cattles and Ramie today, Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason. What are you people doing? We appreciate it. We're getting too many great questions for Jerry. I'm trying to sort through them and figure out, how to get to the other things we want to get to. But we have too many great questions for you, Jerry. We'll get back to the phones in just a moment. Here, I love this question from the YouTube chat. Again, thanks for being with us today and participating however you choose to participate. We very much appreciate it. Jerry, when you were in basketball ops and you were the player personnel director, who was the most impressive prospect you had the opportunity to work out? I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember one in particular I thought was you just knew stardom was going to be there. I mean, nothing's for sure, but Vince Carter.
Okay.
Vince Carter was just, his athleticism. Insanity. And you just knew, boy, and you knew pretty much after he worked out that he wasn't going to slip to us. So you knew that,
But the Warriors traded him, right?
Yeah, they traded him for Antoine Jameson, who was really good, but he wasn't Vince Carter.
Yeah.
And so, and such a nice young man, you just knew that he had everything it took to be a major star, which of course he was. And even at the end, he was still a classy young guy or older guy, of course,
but a classy veteran. Didn't he? Became more of a three-point
guy. Found a way to be valuable on a world champion with Nowitzki's Dallas Mavericks, and of course I thought he was a very solid player for the Kings under the circumstances, but just top of the line guy. But that workout, I mean, it was breathtaking. And I don't lose my breath much, but it took it.
Great question. Back to the phones, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. John joins us on Sactown Sports 1140. How you doing, John? Happy Friday.
I'm good. Thank you. And thank you guys for your contribution to our community. I'm a long-time season ticket holder since 85. My question is this. I've heard that that Coach Brown has instituted a conceptual offense. And I don't really know what that means. And I was wondering if you could help educate me because, I've seen what was going on over in San Francisco. And I've also lived through the Coachy days with the backdoor stuff. So can you help me understand what offense the Kings are running?
Well, thank you, John. Again, an example of, I appreciate it, but people saying kind of things like that. People have started drinking early today. It's very obvious. That said, Jared, it's a great question.
It is a great question. And first, congratulate you for being a fan since 85. So you're in my territory there. But, obviously different kind of ball game now and different way the teams play. And as you pointed out, conceptual. To me, it's really basically spreading the floor, trying to take what the defense gives you, try to find ways to get to the basket.
Less structure,
more individuality, and the Warriors play that way extremely well, and that's pretty much it. We used to call it draw and kick, to where you're trying to drive to an area if you can until another defender helps, then you kick it out and then try to get the numbers and the ball moving around. But it's a fun. I like it. Although I haven't said that, I always think that most teams down the stretch of games in the last 3 or 4 minutes, crunch time as we call it, would sometimes be better served to go ahead and run structured plays to make sure, try to make sure that the right guy gets the ball in the right spot. But
and you can always improvise off of that.
And you can improvise off that.
Defense dictates it.
So anyway, but that's pretty much what it is. It's just really taking what the defense is going to give you. In some cases, you've got a real advantage at one spot, and you can get a basket. Harrison Barnes is going to go in and post up on certain circumstances, and you take advantage of your advantages.
So would you say, Jer, as far as it being conceptual, the concepts have to do with space and spacing, and less with you go here, it's at this screen, And you have to be aware because the space, obviously, and the spacing is changing depending on what the defense does. I've always thought the Warriors, since Steve Kerr got there, and of course they've won 4 championships, but they turn the ball over a lot. And I think those things to a degree go hand in hand because there are some of it's just sloppy ball handling, guys getting carried away with how they, passes they think they can make. But I think some of it is there, since it's less structured. Oh, I thought you were going to make that read and I made the different read.
Yeah, well, that is true. And that's why some teams are really good at it and some teams aren't. I think the thing to me that really seems to make it work, and I give Sabonis most of the credit here because he is totally unselfish, maybe to a fault. And they run a lot of offense through him, and that gives your wing players. And really, one thing that Coach Brown does is almost always you have 4 guys on the floor that are 3-point threats. And so that really spaces the floor. And then if you can play off Sabonis, whether it's screens or he can find guys back cutting or find the open guy and the ball starts, you start get 2-on-1 situations and the ball moving and you're going to get good shots. Now you're not going to hit them every night, but this is a team I've always said, if you want to see them win, if they'll rebound close to their opponent, shoot their free throw or threes at a reasonable pace, 37, 38%, and have an assist to turnover ratio of 2-to-1. And if they do those things and
check.
And their bench
and
their bench is at least equal, they'll win 80%.
So let's put it to bed right now. Sabonis versus CWebb. Who's the better big man for the Kings? It's not fair in a way. Sabonis just got here. CWebb was here a long time. CWebb's phenomenal. He's one of the most talented players I've ever seen. But people are throwing that question around. I know Dave has asked that question. So what say you at this point, Jer? Sabonis or CWebb?
Well, CWebb is the most talented of the two, and maybe the most talented player the Kings have ever had in Sacramento, at least. And having said that, I think that there's some positives that Domas has that maybe are even better than CWebb. And I think, he's just instinctively a ball mover more so, and his stamina. I don't know that I've seen a guy with the stamina of Sabonis. Certainly, CWebb was in good shape, but he couldn't go like that all game. And and his and probably Sabonis deserves a little bit of a plus on the side of just his productivity. He's a guy that scores 18 points on 12 shots. Chris wasn't quite that effective. He'd score more. Different teams, different times. But
is Sabonis right now anyway carrying a heavier load because of the rest of the roster?
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. With CWebb, he had Vlade or Brad Miller, and he had more talent around him. Let's face it. But
that Page guy was pretty good.
That Page guy was awfully good in his game.
I know,
but
that would be incredible.
But all that being said, CWebb, CWebb's the best, most talented player the Kings of Sacramento has ever had.
This is the way sports is. This is the way life is. Just think how differently CWebb's legacy, if you will, would look if they'd won a title here, right? If they had, yeah.
His legacy pretty good anyway.
Yeah, it is. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Matt joins us. Matt, happy Friday. You're on with Jerry and Whitey. What's up?
Happy Friday. I want to first off thank you, Whitey, for all your years of service. You're desperately missed on KHTK 1140. We loved you. I've been listening to you since prior to 9/11. And Jerry Reynolds, your dedication and devotion to the team is amazing. Plus, I remember spending 3 hours in a Laguna Seca parking lot, leaving an IndyCar race with you. We were next to each other for most of the time trying to get out of the parking lot.
I remember that well, yeah.
Wow. You and I made eye contact, and I was like, go Kings. And you're like, yeah, we stuck there forever.
Yeah.
But I just want to, I'm telling you, Whitey, we miss you. We hope the Rise guys come back. You, Justin, and Phantom were fabulous. But Jerry Reynolds, you're amazing. And I'm Lithuanian, so go Sabonis. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate
that. Dyson, yeah, he's right. I really was pretty much convinced that I would never leave that parking lot, they'd be burying me somewhere down there. That was I really enjoyed the experience, so I would say that. But
here you are. You made it.
I made it.
And he made it too.
So yeah, it took a little patience. It took patience. Yes.
339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Keep the questions for Jared coming. You can also, of course, hit us up on the YouTube chat. Some great questions there. Coming up next, the Kings' happiest surprise this NBA season so far. So who's the unhappiest surprise so far in this NBA season? We sort through the many contenders next. Jerry Reynolds, Whitey Gleason in for Cattles and Ramie.
while the other, we're still trying to figure that out.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Jerry Reynolds, Whitey, Gleason in for Cattles and Ramie today. Jerry, something almost interesting has happened in the Celebrity All-Star Game. You know, years ago, All-Star Weekend, the NBA used to have an old-timers game.
Yeah.
And somebody, I'm not sure who, somebody got hurt badly. And after that, it tore up their knee. They stopped having it. But in this celebrity game, Richard Jefferson's playing, and so is Carlos Boozer.
Yeah, that's almost an old timers game there.
Yeah. So they need to get Ronnie Price in there to dunk over Carlos Boozer for old time's sake, right?
Yeah, they do.
I
don't know if Ronnie could do it right now, but there was a time when he sure could.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. I forgot about the old timers game because I remember seeing some of them. I thought I kind of enjoyed them.
Richard Jefferson just dunked Jerry on some guy about 4 feet tall.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
Then he flexed. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, the old timers game. I think like Pete would play. You know, Rick Barry would record. Rick Barry.
You couldn't get Rick. Oscar Robertson played. I remember Pete Maravich, Jerry Sloan when it was in Chicago. I had Jerry Sloan playing, and as I recall, I'm trying to think who was really. I think Maravich was probably the best, as I recall. You know, looked like he could still play.
Yeah. I kind of miss that, but I understand. You know,
sure.
It's a bad look when someone gets injured. Thank you again for being with us today. Thanks to Sports 1140, Sactown Sports 1140 for having us. And the participation, really appreciate it. Still getting some of these great questions. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. Here's Jerry, one for you from the YouTube chat. Also, you can reach us 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Jerry, what is the greatest game you ever called?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well,
you want to think about it a little bit?
Well, you know, I can kind of think at the time.
There's different ways you could slice it. The most significant game, the closest game.
I honestly think the one that just probably was most memorable to me was the 1996 game with the Kings and the Seattle Sonics.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, because it'd been a while, 10 years.
10 years.
And the excitement in the arena. I mean, I'd never seen it really to its equal, to be honest. I mean, maybe
that was a really good Seattle team, obviously.
Well,
they went to the finals.
Team. And the Kings had them on the ropes. You know, if Mitch doesn't get hurt, they'd split up in Seattle and came down. And I mean, and Kings were leading most of the way, and Mitch got hurt.
So was it the game in Seattle that the Kings won?
Yeah, they won one, and Mitch guarded Gary Payton and all the keys and really closed him down. And then, went for his usual 35 or whatever. The Rock was rocking.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, at the time. And it's maybe wasn't the most meaningful, but it sure was, something you remember.
I remember, I don't even think it was a great game, but when the Kings beat the Suns, as you said, the third year that Webber team, they were in the playoffs, and they beat the Suns. And I remember Grant asking you, they won. The Kings won a playoff series. Grant asking you, did you ever think the Kings would do this, Jerry? And I remember you saying, I did. I knew at some point. I remember that too. They actually won a playoff series.
Yeah, you could see it coming. They were just too good to be denied. And I mean, and I thought they were good enough the year before, but the Lakers were great and just closed them out. But and it's a process. I always hear sometimes fans will say, "Oh, geez, what's the point of getting the 8th in the playoffs, and get swept by the number one team?" It's like, well, if you don't get the playoffs, you're never going to get anywhere. I mean, as some of these teams have been in the lottery, as the Kings have for years and years and years. At some point you got to get there to know what you need to do to get better.
339-1140. Let's talk to AC on Sactown Sports 1140. AC, how you doing?
Hey, two of my favorite people are on, and they're both Whitey. How about that?
Huh?
A good point there.
What's up?
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to talk about that Old Timers game. I remember those two, and I remember what the problem was. You'd have a guy who was maybe 5 years removed from the league. Then you'd have Tommy Heinsohn, with a giant beer belly.
Yeah.
And then then those poor guys would get schooled by the 5-year ex NBA player.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't fun to watch. Although it was kind of funny to see Tommy Heinsohn try to throw up a half-hearted hook.
Well, Tommy would, his philosophy was, if it feels like leather, I'm shooting it.
By the way, Jerry, I got a picture of you on my phone. It's one of my prized possessions.
Well,
wow.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, AC. Appreciate that. I don't doubt that happened. I don't recall that aspect of it, but I could see, like Nate Archibald just a couple years out of the NBA against like Red Kerr or something.
Well, they should have made it, to where you had to be out of the league 10 years at least.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have been out more than 15, because you had a couple old plotters out there that really would just endanger to themselves.
Let's see. We have Angelo with us here on Sactown Sports 1140, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Hello, Angelo. How are you? Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like, is it a Ted? Do we have Ted? The phones are just going crazy here. Hey, Ted, you're on with Whitey and Jerry.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey, Ted.
What's going on?
Fan since they moved here. I was a long-suffering Knicks fan before the Kings came here, and I still am there that way too. So I've never been a big fan of what's the guy that played for the Knicks and then coached the Bulls and coached the Lakers?
Riley? Phil Jackson.
Oh, Phil Jackson. Yeah.
Phil Jackson. Yeah. So he's part of the team that made the playoffs, when they were good, and then he destroys my life, like and the Lakers. But when Jerry was talking about when Jerry and Bernard King was my very first favorite player, so that was
great player.
I loved him, and he had so much game, and just his knee injury really slowed him down, but he still had good years in Washington, I think it was. But that 96 series when we stole one in Seattle that Jerry was talking about, I was at the game in Game 3 that he was. What I just wanted to call about was the standing ovation before the game was like 15 minutes long. And so when Jerry was saying, I don't think I've seen anything like it, I haven't. I'm in my early 50s. I've never seen anything like that environment. It was insanity. And it was, the fans were so fatigued. I think everyone was hoarse and couldn't get loud like down the stretch of the game because they had lost everything from cheering so loud before it. I've just never seen a standing ovation for that length of time before players even hit the floor. And I just wanted to say that was an epic moment. I'll always remember the Arco Thunder and the wood floors and all the playoff games, like beating the Jazz, getting past the Jazz, and getting past some of those teams that we just, getting past Stockton and Malone.
That was really something, wasn't it? And I'll never forget the standing ovation that Stockton got. That
right.
was, by the Kings fans.
Because we knew that was it for him.
Yeah, I thought that was so classy.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. The loudest I heard the old building, and I'm not saying it was the loudest because I wasn't there all the time, but when the Lakers were here 2000, and I think that was a best of 5 series, I think. So it was Game 4, and the Lakers won the first 2, Kings win Game 3, and then they win Game 4 to send it back to LA for a decisive 5th game. And I remember I was there with my daughter, Lonnie. We stood the whole time, and you couldn't, if someone next to you said something, you had no chance to hear him. And I remember talking to Derek Martin about it, and he said him and somebody on the benches, they were saying the same thing. That place was, it was about as loud as a building could get.
Well, it was. And then, then the guys with the cowbells behind which I enjoyed seeing Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
Phil Jackson, totally uncomfortable.
Yeah. So coming up here, the Kings' happiest surprise in the NBA. Who is the unhappiest surprise? Wombo. That's next here. It's Whitey and Jerry in for Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports, 1140.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Sacramento weather is brought to you by Folsom Lake Key.
Jer, we're having too much fun here.
We are.
They told us we're gonna have to get out of the studio here pretty soon.
They're gonna lock the doors and say don't come back.
Yeah, I think so.
That happens to us a lot, you know.
It does. Well, I have a chance. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Simone. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for being with us here. But we're not done just yet. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. If you got a question for Jerry or for myself, for that matter, I have a question for you, Jerry. As we know, the Kings probably the happiest surprise in the NBA so far. Who would you say? I know we've talked about this on the Old Fashioned 3 podcast. Who's the unhappiest surprise so far in the NBA team-wise?
Well, I think in the West, I think it's the Lakers. I mean, you know, nobody can tell me they expected to be where they are currently. Hope they stay there. But I don't, and I think the Warriors in the West.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't keep excusing it. I mean, they keep thinking they're going to get it going, and of course, without Steph, it's tough. But I don't think anybody expect the defending champions to be where they are.
I think what makes it even harder for them is that last year they won a championship, surprisingly, to a degree. It was kind of a surprise. I think even Steve Kerr said, I don't know we were going to do this. But then they thought they were opening the window to a brighter future with the young players. And here they are, half a season later having to say, yeah, Wiseman wasn't it. So those plans to build that bridge into the future have kind of crumbled. So all of a sudden you're sitting there going, man, is this it for us?
Yeah. I mean, and so, but there's time for them to, and one thing about it is with Steph, if they get healthy and Clay can make strides. I mean, you wouldn't want to play them either, and they're capable. Certainly, they're not afraid of anybody or afraid to go on the road.
Yeah, that's what Richard Jefferson just said on ESPN this week. He said, "I wouldn't pick if it's the Warriors Nuggets." He said, "I wouldn't pick the Warriors to win, but I wouldn't pick against them." So it's like, make up your mind. But I know what he means, right? It's like they're still, that heart of the champion still beating in there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Curry. One of those guys who can do he can do Curry-like things and nobody else can. I mean, he is a difference maker. Mm-hmm. Certainly Jokic is for the Nuggets. I mean, there's not a lot of, I always say there's a lot of star talent, but there's not very many difference makers. If you've got one of them, that gives you a chance to win every game.
Yeah, I know that on the pod, we've talked about maybe Toronto. I think Phantom might have mentioned Toronto, or you mentioned Toronto. And they've been disappointing, but I think with Pirtle, I think they have a chance here to make a little push, don't you?
I do too. I think they do. I think I think they've been, have been disappointing. I think Chicago has been very disappointing. The Bulls, I don't think they're going to make a push. I think they're, kind of wallowing around into heading nowhere. So, Then of course, I think, you look at the bottom four. I don't think anybody expected them to be real good, but,
the tankathon teams,
teams.
Yeah. Spurs and your Rockets and your Hornets and Detroit.
Yeah.
And I don't even like thinking about those teams.
Yeah, those teams. I mean, surprised that Hornets haven't been better, but they haven't, and they pretty much sold off. And the other thing with the Rockets is like, well, this is your second year being crappy, so-called developing these young guys. Well, as I think Eric Gordon or somebody pointed out, or that some of the guys aren't necessarily going to be developed. I mean, if you could develop everybody to some miraculous level, there'd be 1,000 Michael Jordans running around.
You're right. It was Eric Gordon a while ago. Now he's out of there, and he's been wanting out of there for a while, but somebody asked him, and the team's struggling, and someone asked him, so how has this gotten better since the season started? And he said, it has not. So,
the record speaks for itself.
We haven't gotten better. So there you are.
Yeah, your record's your record's who you are.
Yeah. Now we know that Russell Westbrook's been talking to maybe 4 teams, and of course the Jazz are like, yeah, by all means. And apparently he's really zeroing in on the Clippers. Why would someone, especially a team like the Clippers, and they look like now maybe they're on the right track? Jerry, tell me why they would want Russell Westbrook.
Well, they hope they would get the former Russell Westbrook as opposed to the most recent Russell Westbrook, I think. And I think their thinking is we don't have a point guard now. And he can run a team and defend at the position and all that.
Because they got rid of John Wall too.
Yeah.
And I do think, and I don't know that they're right, but I think they think we've, with Kawhi and Paul George, we've got strong enough guys that he'll come in, understand that he's got to fit in. Now, I'm not saying he will, but if I were them, I wouldn't be too scared of it.
Really?
I mean, and I think the other part of it's Ty Lue. I think he's an awfully good coach and would probably have a little sit down with Russ before they sign him. So if the other team, I think the Heat's thinking about it. So, he'll have a home, and, you just hate to see Russ go out the way he did with the Lakers. I'll say that.
Yeah. Although he had his moments, didn't he?
He did.
Even you have to admit, you, a noted self-proclaimed Laker hater, have said that he played well at times for him.
I thought when they finally brought him off the bench, he was much better because at that time, LeBron wouldn't be on the floor. He could handle it more and do more, feel more comfortable. And I think that's maybe what the Clippers are thinking, that, well, we don't have a ball dominant guy like LeBron. And so he might fit better.
Do you think Russ might be motivated to go to the Clippers and stick it to the Lakers? And that might be one reason why, if you're the Clippers, you're thinking, we're getting a very motivated Russ.
Oh,
you like that.
I have absolutely no doubt Russell Westbrook.
Now I see why you like that idea.
As intense as he is, you think, I'm sure he's probably got the, Laker banners with arrows in them on his house somewhere.
To me, I'll never forget, no matter what happens this year, I'll never forget how hard he plays. That'll be the one thing I think I'll always remember, more than the triple doubles. But he plays so hard, but he's just been so stubborn that he's been inefficient. And I think it's a matter of, hey, why should I let you shoot? I am better than you. We need me to take this shot. Okay, but you missed the last 7. I think it's kind of a character flaw in him as a basketball player, but hopefully they can work something out here.
Yeah, that's what I've always said. It's like at some point, Russ, somebody needs to say, look, Russ, let me explain to you this way. You're not a good shooter. So try to avoid a lot of shots.
Sometimes you're a really bad shooter.
But you're a heck of a player. You are a winner. The guy is durable. He plays. You can count on him. You can count on him really scrapping and hustling. So, okay, Russ, you do those things and don't shoot so much, and we'll be all right.
What advice would you have for Kings fans? It's one thing we learned again today. Kings fans, they love you and they trust you. I think that's it. They know they can trust you. So what would your advice be for them the rest of the way? And yeah, the first half, so to speak, has been great, but it might get a little bumpy here. So what advice would you have for Kings fans heading down the second, quote unquote, half of this season towards the playoffs?
Well, it's probably like I'm going to do. I just enjoy this team. I enjoy watching them. I'm going to be hoping they can win. I know it's going to get tougher, and I don't I'd like to be wrong and think they're going to finish first in the West, but I don't believe that's going to happen. But I'm just going to enjoy the progress this team's made. And if they make the playoffs, that's something I didn't really particularly expect at the start of the year. So I'm not going to get down on them and realize that it's the first step. This is a team in progress. It's being built in progress. So there's a couple more years that they need to, get better, add pieces during the summer, draft, things like that. But it's not a finished product.
Yeah, we should, Jer, savor the fact that here it is, February into March, April. These games are going to matter.
Oh,
Isn't that great?
Isn't that great? Yeah, into actually games that matter in March. Wow, how long has it been?
Jerry, thank you so much for coming in today. I always have a blast with you. Today it's been especially a lot of fun. So
it has been fun for me, and of course, I love working with you on the Old Fashioned 3.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, you fans out there, Old Fashioned 3 podcast, me and Whitey and the Phantom, we're darn near tolerable.
Yeah. Thank you, Jer. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Simone. Most of all, thank you for listening. Thanks to Sactown Sports 1140 for having us. Enjoy your All-Star weekend.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? So you've got an oil change coming up. Consider STP Conventional High Mileage to save on motor oil for your everyday vehicle. Right now, you can get 5